Special meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District. Today is Sunday, July 5th. The time is about 8 a.m. and I call the meeting to order. Michael, do you have some announcements?
Yeah, this meeting is once again being fed live over the internet, and the public can view this meeting by going to KMPUD.com and following the appropriate link. If the public would like to make a comment or ask a question, please email msharp@kmpud.com. and the board will respond. The participating public, please identify yourself when making comments. And that's all I have.
Great. Peter, would you please call the roll?
Rickard? Here. Andy?
Here.
O'Grady?
Here.
Dornberg here. And Epstein?
Here.
All right. Full board.
Item number 4 is oral communications, public input. It's the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on non-agenda items relating to district business. No action can be taken by the board on matters not appearing on the agenda. Is there any oral communication?
Yes,
Welcome.
I'd like to just make an introduction. My name's John Ryder. I've just taken a position, more or less replacing the Peter Force position and working for the KMPUD group, representing his real estate interests here in Kirkwood. Had the pleasure of meeting some of you over the last 8 or 9 days. I think I would like to bring to the attention of the board my last 9 years in Durango were serving as the district manager for a similar district, not quite as complex, and have the breadth of scope that you do in Durango, Colorado. And I'm hoping to use that experience and the fact that I'll be able to see a lot of the issues directly as you would see them from that 9 years of experience. But wanted to make an introduction to the board. I apologize, I can't stay much longer. I have a long road trip home after being away from the family, but I will be in Kirkwood frequently. I look forward to meeting all of you personally for the first time and discussing issues and continuing my relationship with Michael and his staff.
Thank you.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other public input? Item number 5 is corrections to the agenda or consent calendar. Michael, do you have any corrections to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Staff would like to pull items 8B, I, the R2 and D retention payment from the agenda, and item 1, minutes, from the consent agenda.
Great. I'd also like to pull the consent for claims because I've got a couple of questions I'd like to briefly raise. Moving on to item 6, so adoption of the revised consent calendar. Would anybody care to make a motion to adopt the revised consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to adopt the revised consent, which is now the bad debt, receivables, and district secretary items.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. So item 7 is consent items brought forward for separate discussion or action. And I guess Michael and Jill, I just had a couple of questions on the consent count for claims, which is 3 of them. Tax direct for $30,000 is question 1. And then Amador County tax administration fees of $5,000. And then finally, Alpine County Health and Human Services for $1,470. Can you briefly let me know what those are?
The tax direct is multiple. It's our federal tax payments.
And withholding?
What was that?
Withholding tax?
Yes.
Right.
And there was an extra one in there. At the end of the year, we pay out vacation and sick over 160 hours. So that's for, I believe, 3 pay periods.
Okay. And the second one was Amador County tax administration fees?
Something we pay every year. They calculate their administrative fees and charge that back to.
We pay.
It's actually a little bit less, I believe, than we paid last year.
Okay. And I guess the final one is Alpine County Health and Human Services. Is that another tax?
That's our hazmat
Oh,
fees.
okay.
For things like Coupa and other programs like that they administer.
Thank you. So I guess I'll make a motion, we approve the consent for claims.
Second that.
I'm sorry, Nancy?
Sorry, Spanish. So as you're moving forward in your meetings with the Amador County District Rep in Morgan, I guess we'll be putting that on your agenda to talk about. Maybe.
Sure, I mean, it would certainly be good to know more specifically what we get for that, but I imagine it's because they are administering sales taxes and the distribution of property taxes and all those things, right? It's probably.
And they provide backup.
Yeah, I imagine that's what it is, but we can certainly clarify it.
I'm just hoping maybe we can go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seemed like a large number, that's why I flagged it. So I made a motion, you seconded, Eric?
Yes, I did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Moving on to agenda item 8A, discussion and possible action regarding the district's financials, efforts to reduce expenses and financial impacts of the continuing drought on the district's finances. Welcome, Jill Campbell.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. We'll go ahead and start with May financials. They start in the packet on page 4. And I'll go over a few things on the balance sheet. Our total operating cash at the end of May was $3.2 million, down $528,000 from plan, mainly due to revenues being down for the year. The reserve fund is still at $3.2 million, being as right underneath the reserve fund, you see the total trustee special construction account. That's our RUS account, and it still has $900,000 in it. So we haven't needed to pull any reserve funds as of yet to pay for any of the overages on Out Valley. Mentioned before, but our assets, the classification of those are still a work in progress. Total buildings shows it's over plan by $43 million, and generation equipment shows that it's under plan by $45 million. We've started work with the auditors on this, but as mentioned before, this was a recommendation from Bob Benson. Because the project isn't 100% complete, we have the full cost in a holding account that just sits in the building. So as soon as that's done, it's going to be classified to the appropriate places. Accounts payable is showing under plan. That's just actually a misbudgeting. There is no capital projects, and there's nothing outstanding for PG&E on the books as of yet because we haven't received a final bill. Unless there's any questions, I'll go ahead and move on to income statements. Okay. In the packet are the May financials that come directly from PCS, but on the screen I've formatted a little bit different as we've discussed some changes that we'd like to make, and eventually I'd like this to be put into the PCS system so they're shown the way we want to see them. So I'll go over what's presented here just because it's in a more readable format. The bottom lines are the same. I've just categorized them a little bit different. So this is showing that our May revenues are up $45,000, which is true, but $40,000 of that is in snow removal. What that is the refunds or the credits from last year was sitting in a liability account. So that was moved over in May, and there wasn't a budgeted amount for revenue in May. So without that considered, we're just about on plan with $5,000 over plan for that. Our year-to-date revenues are down $610,000 from plan. And as we mentioned before, cost of goods, the negative amount showing on the income statements in the packet for propane, because the cost of propane is down, is all put in cost of goods now. So for the month, we are down 16,000 from plan, year-to-date 17,000. We have been able to save on operating expenses, as we've mentioned before, with cost-saving measures that we've put in place. Year-to-date, it's just about 200,000 that we've saved in operating expenses. Depreciation, I just have it as a 0 right now. The budget, in the packet, it shows that we are under plan for depreciation because we had planned on the full Out Valley being complete and depreciated. So just to show this, we're calling it a one-time savings. We've taken out that savings in there. Same thing with interest expense. We're just showing the budget as what we're paying actually. So for May, our net loss is 188,000. Year to date, we are at a net loss of 317,000 with the two one-time savings not accounted for. It's 428,000 under plan year to date. And we did have to allocate 225,000 in property taxes to electric for May, bringing what we've allocated year to date to 474,000, leaving 305,000 yet to be allocated through May.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board or audience?
Are you going to cover the June preliminary
Yes.
separately?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the next
I'll
one.
wait.
I appreciate the revised format, if not the information.
We can move on to June. So June is formatted the same. This is a preliminary because we don't have all of our operating expenses in yet. We did try and close. Hopefully this is very close because with the year end we tried to get all of our expenses in right away. But the revenues are actual. So our operating revenues for June were 400,000, 27 under plan. So year to date, our operating revenues are 636,000 under plan. Operating expenses, year to date, we've been able to save 216,000. Depreciation is a little different than May. I did show that there was a savings of 49,000 in depreciation for the year and year to date. What that is we, as Michael will go over in a little bit, we did get a powerhouse depreciation letter from Russ. So the 49,000 is the savings for May and June that I'm showing here.
The Russ letter makes it go back to January 1st, so are we going to revise previous months?
Actually, the Russ letter, this is taking that into account.
Okay, so it's more than just,
Well,
but
no,
all of
it
it was
only-
done in June?
It only accounts for May and June, the 2 months that we get the lower interest rate. The balance of it is at 7%.
They were saying after 6 months of
As of
Out Valley.
November 1st, it would take,
okay.
so they took a subnote in our financials
Yeah.
that it would take 6 months to get that rate, and they applied that 4.66 to 2015. So this
Okay.
actually does reflect that savings,
Okay.
and the rest of the year is at plan.
Okay.
So what we're looking at, if this stays year to date, we're looking at a net loss of 522,000, which is 384,000 under plan. I am projecting that we'll have to allocate 200,000 to electric and property taxes for June. So year to date, for the year, allocating 675,000 in property taxes to electric to cover the tier ratio, leaving 175,000 unallocated, and that would basically cover fire department loss and not all of our cash losses for the year.
So Joe, is it fair, just to, probably way oversimplifying, but is it fair to say that since this chart doesn't bake in those one-time issues with depreciation and so on. It just assumes that was at plan. That $500,000 or so that we're down is why we're 500,000 or so down in cash. Is that kind of,
Yeah, in
those two
the,
map to each other sort of roughly?
yes. There is a little bit more to the cash. This goes back, I'm not sure when it happened, but we did have an issue where we were paying, or we were budgeted to pay some of the Russ interest.
Yeah, right.
So it's a
Yeah,
combination
there's
of the two.
some of those things, but I mean, what's good about the chart is when we look at this income statements and you look at just the bottom line, it looks like we've done,
We're doing
compared to
great.
plan, quite well, but it's all because of that depreciation business.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
That's it on that, unless there's any questions.
Why don't you keep rolling?
And we will go into the 5-year cash waterfall. The cash waterfall was sent after the board packet went out, so I have copies if anyone needs them. I'll go over some of the changes that have been made since the last version. There was a change in what was booked on the AR revenue. The last version showed it just as the income statement shows it, meaning that as soon as we bill for the month, we're assuming that we receive all that revenue. So that's been changed in this version so that we're actually receiving 90% of revenues within 30 days and 10% of revenues within 60 days. Another change is that June is showing the actual cash balance of $2,759,000. The previous version was a forecast on that.
Jill, can you explain why we were quite a bit off on that forecast?
I'll have to get back to you on it.
Because it's a fairly large number, the gap between the budget.
$389,000.
Yeah, it's quite a big gap for just 3 weeks later. And we don't really recover from that until...
Yeah, the
well,
next-
we don't recover from that. Maybe by March of 16, maybe, but a little bit. But then we're, again, way lower than what we approved in our budget.
I'll get back to you. We just got that number, so I haven't had a chance to
Yeah,
dig
that's an
into that.
important one, I think.
Yeah.
For me to understand.
And then the final change was brought up at the last meeting. The Bank of the West loan previously was showing $7,184,000 expense per quarter, and that's actually our monthly charge. So this version has been changed to show the correct number. So with this current cash waterfall, we're showing our cash low is in December of 2018 at 1.1 million. Again, due to the completion of the switch station project, and this is assuming that we cover that extra 1.2 million cost for the switch station out of operating funds.
And remind me whether this includes refinancing the loans or paying them off?
This is rolling the 3 loans over.
The tab says combined W-out mature. What does that mean?
I'm sorry?
The tab at the bottom of the spreadsheet is labeled combined without mature.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Roll-
Ignore that.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll change that.
All right.
But it's assuming that the 3 loans, the short-term loans in the 5 years are being rolled over.
Okay.
And at this point, we're assuming a 4% interest rate and
Right, 35 years.
35 years.
Okay.
Any questions on the cash flow from the board or audience? Caroline? think you're
What
supposed to
are you-
identify yourself.
Carolyn Scott. Is there an assumption here about weather and snow? And, I mean, it makes a huge difference, obviously.
Yeah.
When you predict this, are you predicting the worst, or?
Yes. Well, you tell us what the worst is. We're assuming this last year is going to continue for 5 years.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But if you have any knowledge,
So if we get a good year, this is
It
no
all gets
longer
better.
Correct.
accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
and if not, we can manage without, we can manage for 5 years as we will.
Great, keep going, Jill.
Next one, please.
I'll be doing the next one. This is a discussion and possible approval of revision of the Kirkwood Mountain Resort Chair 1 payment plan. As the board is aware, the electric meter on Chair 1 was billed incorrectly from November 2012 to March of 2015 due to an incorrect information that was received by Emerson Network Power. At a June 13, 2015 board meeting, the board approved a payment plan whereby we credited the Chair 1 billing for a period of 29 months to offset this overbilling. Casey Bland of Vail has contacted the district and recommended a couple of different payment revisions where we credited more accounts. Doesn't actually work with our accounting system as well, so staff recommends a third proposal. As of the June billing, the district has already credited $15,000. We leave that credit as stand, and then which would leave a remaining $200,000 remaining balance. Staff recommends 4 equal payments in the amount of $50,000 each, beginning in July of 2015, continuing in December 2015, July 2016, with a final payment in December 2016. This would allow Vail to recoup all costs in a 2-year period and also keep our books straight. So with that, we have already passed this by Vail, and Casey has indicated his approval of this payment plan. So with that, staff recommends approval.
And that is also in the cash waterfall, I forgot to mention that.
Any questions, comments from the board or audience?
Just one, is it also in, but it's not in it's not in next year's budget? Right, it's only in the cash waterfall.
Right.
So that's a $100,000 change in the budget. Right.
It's a $200,000 over
Yeah,
Yeah, the first payment is when, I'm sorry?
July. This
Okay,
month.
right.
If
And
it's
then
not-
another, so it's 100,000, okay. I move approval.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. I said that I would change the order of things, and I forgot to do it. Should we have a, go ahead.
We still have one more item under financials.
I'm sorry, audit update.
Just a quick audit update. We did have a productive pre-audit the week of June 22nd. We did it all remotely, which seemed to work out well, and it saves us some costs in getting them out here. Just to confirm, the letter in the packet deals with charges for overages received last year. So it was definitely discussed with Moss Adams that the main thing for a successful audit is communication going forward. And if they see any issues that could be potential cost increases, that they discuss them right away. And we did confirm the cost of the audit, and we've made sure that it does balance. It's the same cost that they quoted us plus $5,500 for the overage from last year. And we did confirm with them that the audit is to be complete by the end of September, and they will present it at the October meetings.
Thank you for confirming that.
We reconfirm that if there's any issues along the way of any sort, that communication is the key, because I think we were lacking that previously. So we have made that a strong point.
I guess my reaction to the board package was, well, great. I look forward to on time and no issues and on cost. But the other one was the Emerson trail of emails. Emerson Electric was really pretty horrible. I mean, they screwed up big time.
Yeah, it was, and yeah, and then when we tried to get them to the table to talk about it, they didn't come to the table. So, but they have finally come around, and we met with a senior official, I think it was last week, and they agreed to our terms. So they will be coming out, they will be certifying all of our meters, they will be backing off the entire cost for the visit that they previously did, the invoice that I mentioned in my emails. And they're going to take full responsibility for the Mountain Club meter, which they, was in error. And so I think they're making amends for their actions. It just took them a while to get them to the table.
I guess my only further comment is I'd encourage staff to look at them as a vendor with a critical eye. Meaning we have good vendors and bad vendors. Right now they don't look to me like a great vendor. Is that it on 8A?
That's it.
Thank you. But don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Given yesterday's chain of events, that maybe we should pull forward the committee report on Kirkwood Summer Festival as opposed to making everybody wait for all the other stuff. Would you like to give a report on that, or are you not in a position to?
Oh, sure, I can always talk. Yesterday was certainly a challenge, and I think that the two things that really stand out in my mind about yesterday is the graciousness of our community. I never heard one complaint. We had, lines here and lines there and crowded conditions, but the graciousness of our community is astounding. And then how everyone pulled together. We divided up into different teams. Casey had his food and beverage teams. We had the the wine teams. We had the silent auction team, registration. Everyone divided up and got the job done. And I just want to thank everybody for outstanding work. We actually got extremely lucky because once we had those lines, there was no place to sit. Suddenly the rain stopped and we were able to open up outside, and it almost looked like a normal picnic by the end of the day. We were able to wipe off a few chairs and open it up, and I thought it was astounding. So thank everyone for their hard work. I know everybody on the board was working just as hard.
Yeah, thank you, staff, as well as the barbecue, summer festival subcommittee, Nancy, Trevette, Caroline, Scott, and a number of others. And thank you, Casey, for your help. Any comments on the summer festival?
It was amazing. I mean, it was a great event in the end. I mean, you guys just did amazing. I mean, when I say you guys did amazing work. I mean, standing behind the dessert table was not hard work. That was amazing. So congratulations.
Several people commented to me that they liked the indoor portion because you sort of met more people that way instead of being I didn't mind the 20-minute line to get food because there were a bunch of people we started talking to that we hadn't met before. So I didn't know to what degree there's a message in any of that might be applied even in sunny weather.
Yeah. I heard a similar comment. Meaning indoor is good, but 40 to 50-minute lines not so good.
Yeah, we apologize for the lines and.
Well, there's nothing else.
I don't think there's any.
No, no one seemed to mind because you just sort of did other stuff.
I saw people eating in line. I mean,
Well, yeah.
They were done with the food, they're gone on to the salad.
To graze your way through the line kind of thing, but we appreciate the can-do attitude of the board especially and the team that everybody put together, so thank you for understanding.
From registration, we got all positive that they can't believe that it was pulled together so fast and put inside. And people came out specifically, because we did a great job and they want to support the community. And somehow they liked being able to touch elbows.
It's kind of like a powder day.
Yeah.
Right.
This had to close. Powder day. It was indoors.
Kind of like that.
Yeah. If you remember those.
Do we have any preliminary walk-in numbers?
No.
So that is the question I have, which is, could we ask for like a 5-year comparison from, or 4-year, whatever it makes sense, from revenue from the event, donations, expenses, and what we netted for the August meeting?
Yep.
Thank you. Anything else on Summer Festival? Moving on to 8B, which is discussion and possible action regarding the final issues and ongoing maintenance associated with the Out Valley Power Line project. And I guess it's 8B2, fiber line repair project update.
So thank you. So the staff continues to work on the closing out of the Out Valley project, including finalizing and receiving the as-built. We're still looking for the as-built from PG&E for the 4 poles that they built down there. Retention payments, we had to pull one retention item today. It'll be back onto the August once we have proper documentation. Closeout permits, we have to close out our SWIP and some environmental closeout. Those aren't quite ready.
Could you tell me what that means, SWIP?
It's an environmental, and it's state water. I can't.
Okay.
I can get back to you on it. I actually have it, but
Thank you.
it's SWWP, I believe, is SWIP. Prepare final contract paperwork. We've already done the overhead and the substation. We have the underground left to do, and the notice of completion. 2 of them will be recorded on, I think, the 8th, and the final one still is the underground left to be done. As the board is aware, on March 2nd, the district was notified that the T1 line failed underneath the Silver Lake Bridge. We've been bringing this back as far as contacting the Q&D, the installer of the underground line for remediation. We're going to go throughout the entire project fiber system and purge out the water conduits, get the water out of there, seal the conduits between the cable and the conduit, cap the spare line so that we don't get further water intrusion, poke any weep holes that we feel that are necessary in the vaults themselves, and then complete splice protection, bringing the splices up out of the water. Now the work is scheduled for July 9th and 10th, so just this next week we should have Edge out here. District staff will be in attendance. We'll be there inspecting the work. They know exactly what we need to do. We're in close communication with Exponential, and we expect this project to be done in a couple of days. In conjunction with that, after we complete that project, we'll be going back out. We'll be taking a power outage, not in the valley, but the Out Valley line will go down. We'll go into power generation of generators, and we'll actually pump out the electrical vaults that have water in it. We've also obtained, show and tell, these covers. Now they look like sleds that you could take down, but they're actual manhole covers. And actually the manhole sits on top of here, and the water, if it does intrude, fills up and then dissipates. So it's a maximum amount of water that can be fit into electrical vault. These are, wastewater uses these in the meadow for manholes that are in submerged areas. So you can actually limit the amount of water that actually gets into the fluxion system. So I've talked about these in the past. I say they look just like a sled. They even have a handle. And they do, but this is exactly what they are. And they actually have a gasket so that they make a seal so that they actually, and the intent is if you fill this up with a hose, you'll actually see the water get up to the top and then flow off. And staff has tested these. So show and tell. And if you did want to borrow this during the winter, let us know. No competition, Casey.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments from the board or audience on the fiber line update? Why don't you keep going, Michael? 8B3, proposal from Q&D Construction, complete repair of section of underground cable along Highway 88 near Places.
As a board, board approved an emergency repair to Highway 88 near Places due to water being blocked by the Surrey cap on the Out Valley line and coming out of a cut line and sheeting across the road. Repairs were completed as per Caltrans specifications during the winter. It actually happened in January. We estimated that the cost at the time, the board approved a cost of approximately $45,000. We were able to do it for $24,000, and we repaired a couple of different sections. Due to continuing areas of sheeting, when we received additional weather, district staff and the RCI has met with Caltrans, and they have come up with a cause and solution to the problem and have requested additional repairs be made. They're looking at a additional area of Caltrans has requested up to 9 additional breaks be installed along the 500-foot section of road. And when we call it a break, it's a break in the slurry wall, so they actually dig it out to allow the water to go through. Based on the length of time that it took Q&D to complete the original work, it would take a maximum of 5 days of construction. Review of the area and discussions with Caltrans indicate that we may be able to reduce this number, and I truly believe we'll be able to reduce this number to 3 or 4. Worst case scenario is that this would take a 5-day work week and cost up to $80,000. Staff feels that they'll probably come in at less than half of that, but because of the mobilization costs incurred, we need the authorization to go up and spend up to a maximum of that amount to be able to repair the problem once and for all when we're out there with Caltrans and RCI. So it is staff recommendation that the board approve the expenditure, or allow staff to approve the expenditure of up to $80,000 with a project management and inspection contingent of $3,300 for a total cost of $83,300. Once again, last time we did this, you approved $45,000, we came in at $24,000. I feel we'll have similar results of this, but I just can't. I need the authorization to get the work done.
And it's time and material contract, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, Michael, can you again review where we think the responsibility for this lies, the financial responsibility?
Well, because the Caltrans mandated that we put the slurry in the road, that was part of their, it was a change order actually to our original plan. They actually asked that we put this slurry in the road. And they didn't identify a French drain that was supposed to be working in this area. So we feel we have a legitimate claim against Caltrans, and we've started the initiation project on a claim against Caltrans for this. But however, our special use permit with Caltrans says that whatever we do to the road that impacts the safety or drivability of the road, we're responsible for. So I feel that ultimately we need to repair the issue, get rid of the safety concerns, and then go back against Caltrans due to the design issues.
So when you say a French drain, but this is along a 500-foot section. It's not
Yeah.
a 500-foot wide French drain, right?
Well, there was a French drain, but it's not, it wasn't, we didn't know it was there. We went right through it. And it's not adequately taking the water from up above and bringing it across the road as it's traveling down.
But it sounds like it never did.
Very well could possibly, well, I don't know, because when we dammed it, you know, we caused the problem because if this water is sheeting across the road, it had a way to go. Now we've dammed it and it's coming up onto the middle of the road.
Okay, but my understanding had been that we did exactly what Caltrans asked us to do.
Absolutely. But the design didn't work. And that's where we feel we have a claim with Caltrans.
Yeah, I just hate.
To flush $80,000 out down the drain?
Yeah.
Even if it's French.
Yeah,
Especially.
Yes. I'm glad Bertrand's not here.
Right.
Anyway, guess this is the kind of thing where we hold our nose and say, okay, because of the safety issue, and so that it doesn't get worse. But I don't know, I mean, you know, I know it's a bureaucratic process probably to go submit a claim and then have meetings, and then more meetings, and then more meetings. But I guess
That's what we
have
encourage
to be
you to
as
do.
aggressive as possible to recover this cost.
And staff gets that direction. I've met with Caltrans several times. I certainly know where their offices are in Stockton, and I'll continue to diligently pursue this.
Additional comments or questions from the audience? Nancy?
So Nancy
need-
Trebet, I'm sorry, Nancy Trebet, KMA. So just for clarification, so this just becomes an additional cost to the Out Valley project. That's where it is, we're gonna see it reflected.
Until and unless we prevail in the claim.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll make that motion to approve staff's ability to spend up to $83,300 to make the necessary Caltrans repair.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. So 8B4 is work plan describing maintenance projects planned for the Out Valley electric line on U.S. Forest Service property.
We have finalized the work plan submitted to the United States Forest Service. It's estimated that they'll take 30 days to complete the review and approval. It's a considerable amount of work, absolutely considerable amount of work involved regarding installing the water bars in front of the vaults, etc. The erosion control, the access roads, grading, that's probably the biggest amount of work to make sure that our roads are in good shape and that any damages that from the underground installation due to that flooding is taken care of. Vegetation management, removal of any hazardous trees. At this point, I don't think we'll have any trees to remove, but we might have some brush, et cetera, to remove around sectionalizer cabinets. Invasive weed monitoring is done in late July, early August to track the progress of any invasive weeds that are in the area, and then improve the pathway between hole 37 and 39 and 20 on the 34 and the 115 line by removing debris. So this is the kind of area that we'll be needing to repair, as we've shown the board in the past, and we'll put in road base on these and grade that out, or create. In this instance, there's a rock wall there. We'll probably just enhance the drain that's existing through the natural course and make it a safe travel way. But you can see the type of work that we have left to do out there. This is actually from 20 down, looking down at KM Green. This is a roadway now, and with working with PG&E, we'd like to re-enhance this to revegetate it, so because we'll never use it as a road, and make it look more like natural when we're done with it. So we don't feel that there's a need for a road in that area because we'll never drive on it. If PG&E wants a road on it, good for them. They can maintain it. So we'll be working with Chris Bennett from PG&E on that. But it's a considerable amount of work. We'll start on that as soon as we receive approval. The other item that we're working on the Out Valley maintenance is the revegetation in 2013 had good solid results. However, 2014 did not. And as you drive up from Jackson, you'll see the results of 2013 compared to 2014. There was just a lack of germination in 2014. 2013 was done, as we all know, perfect timing right before a storm. So you get it down onto the ground, you break up the ground, you get it down, and then you get a storm on top of it, and it really does well to germination and giving that moisture a chance to hold. Our 2014 effort was not done. It was done in a drier period and then baked. This should be covered under warranty. However, worst case that we would have to go through, staff would have to react, rough up the areas, and reseed once again right prior to a storm. A soil tech, the manufacturer, the person that did the job, has been informed and has been on site, and we're meeting with them again on further action. And you can see in this picture, the foreground is the area of 2013 revegetation, and in the distance you can see that 2013 has taken quite nicely. So that's exactly the kind of demarcation you can see between the 2 years, and it might have to do with the mixture, it might have to do with the conditions. I think it had to do with the weather. And here's another area, and you probably have seen this as you're driving by on Highway 88. This was seeded in 2014, and we should see some life in this area. This is one of the areas that we'll have to come through and possibly break up and seed if we can't get soil tech to redo their work. It needs to be rebroken because right now it's caked. You know, it's baked. So that's just something staff is working on, and I'll keep the staff informed, or the district informed on further progress.
So on 4, which is your 4 service requirements, how would you characterize? I know a lot of the work will be done in-house, but how would you characterize the cost ramifications, both this year and ongoing next year?
It is done in-house. And that's, and we take our backhoe, which has been a very effective tool for us, and we actually transport it down the road. We drive it down the road. We don't transport it anywhere. We don't have a trailer. So it is mostly labor. It's, handwork and then backhoe work. The biggest cost we have for the work plan is the base run, the material. We use 50 yards over at the work that we've done, and I'm estimating another 100 or so. But the cost impact, material-wise, is pretty minimal. It's probably, under $1,000, $2,000. The cost on labor is much more extensive because it's handwork. It's, this, if we have to get into that, will be extensive handwork, and material will be extremely light. We'll actually chicken farm this out, where we break it up with landscape breaks, and then chicken feed. Actually, you do it with whirly-birders, but we'll actually broadcast the approved seed using whirly-birds. But it's highly labor-intensive and very low material costs.
Okay.
Michael, if we're doing it in-house, how does the warranty? You said you thought it might be covered under warranty. How would that work?
Yeah, I was trying to describe worst-case scenario. In all of these scenarios, I think that soil tech will come through. They don't want this on their resume. They do a lot of work for different people around, and I feel that soil tech will come through and do what's right and redo it in the right time of year and get a desired result. I just wanted to explain that there could be a worst-case scenario that they say no, it's not covered, or whatever, and we have to, according to our work plan, we have to make it right. And we want, I'm sure the board wants this green, so, and I think with an effort, we can make that happen.
Any further questions from the board or audience on this? So it's 8C. Continued discussion of possible action regarding the current Out Valley cost estimate. Manager Sharp.
Yeah, this forecast has not changed since the last meeting, which was just 3 weeks away. We'll present an updated forecast in August. However, since the last meeting, we have received the USDA depreciation letter that we've been asking for I think since October. The district requested that a depreciation rate based on either 2% or based on 2.26% be used for the other production plant asset, which is the powerhouse. This was based on a report by Exponential Engineering Company, and it was submitted as a report of other production powerhouse depreciation study. as of March 26, 2014. Russ responded that they could not grant approval of the depreciation rate change for the powerhouse assets as requested because that Russ doesn't have a policy of reducing these revisions until after 5 years that the Out Valley line is in service. That means that they want to make sure that the Out Valley line is working for 5 years before they'll let us quicken the depreciation of, or lengthen the depreciation of our current powerhouse assets. They also stated that we used an arbitrary number of 35 years, and they also stated that we were unable to obtain specific information on how long the useful life is from Volvo and Caterpillar. So we don't feel we're arbitrary at all. We have a study that backs up our work, and we could not, they're right, Volvo and Caterpillar will not write down that these machines will last for 35 years. It just, they feel that with proper maintenance, they'll last for a very long time, but for liability reasons, they're not going to write that down. However, we have the dealers that sold us these machines write down warranties that they will last this long with proper maintenance. So we couldn't get the exact manufacturers, but we were able to get. That said, RUS has allowed for a decrease in our depreciation. They took an arbitrary number. They used the number that we used in our 2013-2022 long-range forecast, where we anticipated a drop in these rates. We anticipated that as of November 1st, we would turn on the Out Valley project, and that because of Russ, it would take 6 months for us to get that rate dropped. So that's exactly what they used. So from 2011 to 14, they used a 7% number, and then for November, December, January, February, March, April, they used the 7% number because that's the 6 months. And then in May 1st, they started with the 3.5%. So it comes up to a combined rate of 4.66% in 2015. So that's how that odd number came about. It's the 4 first months of 2015 at 7%, and the balance of the year at the 3.5%. The good news, 3 pieces of good news is we have a $49,000 savings in this last fiscal year. We are on budget as far as depreciation. 3.5% is what we budgeted for the 2015 on years. And we have a very animated consultant in Denver, Colorado, who wants to make an appeal on this because of a lot of reasons that Howard will explain in the August meeting. So, and I don't think there's any negatives. We're going to take this. We've already sent it to our auditors. So, you know, we're in place with 3.5%, which was what staff and what the board I think was anticipating. Howard just feels that we could do much better, and we'll see how he does. So.
My reaction, first of all, I don't want to discourage you from appealing it, but, and I know you didn't get what you wanted, or we didn't get what we wanted, but I kind of look at it and go, it's pretty good.
Pretty reasonable.
And number one, and number two, given the winter we had, having the higher depreciation, you know, sort of protecting revenue, if you will, isn't the end of the world. So I don't have as concerned a reaction as you do. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'd love to get depreciation rate down further so that we can ultimately get our rates down
Right,
faster.
sure.
But I certainly don't think it's a disaster of any kind. I agree with that. I think that I'm glad we've got a reduction in what we've got.
Right.
I think I might have copied you on some of the email traffic. All of the email traffic that you saw was followed up with phone calls. It took an enormous amount of work to get where we are before the end of the year. And I'm really glad that we finally found the contact there, Tina, that finally got us through. So real pleased that we were able to get that through before the end of the year.
Great. Comments, questions from the audience on depreciation subject? Hearing none, we'll go on to 8D, which is discussion of possible action relating to the district's efforts to comply with PG&E's Transmission Interconnection Handbook.
The final system impact study has been received and comments have been incorporated. The system impact study is a general feasibility study of the project. The next scheduled step would be a facility study with an estimated cost of $125,000, which gives more specific information on the exact equipment and the probable cost of PG&E. And I think that's an important point. It's not the total switch station project cost, it's PG&E's cost. And so their construction costs with changing the relays at Salt Springs and Tiger Creek is what we're talking about analyzing, not the cost of the switch station, not the cost of the fence, not the cost of the circuit breaker or the fiber line that goes up to KM Green, just the cost to change some relays. So that's the facility study. PG&E and staff has discussed the possibility of not completing the facility study and moving straight to the engineering study. And that is the actual required study that shows what you have to do. So this is not another probability study. This is actually the design. Due to concerns of having to redo work because of design changes, the district feels that it's important to complete a portion of the environmental work and scoping with the Forest Service and preliminary design before we proceed with the PG&E engineering study. The environmental could be a letter to the file. It could be a neg deck. It could be an impact study. We don't know until we do further study and scoping with the Forest Service to determine what the environmental will be. We continue to work with PG&E on determining these next steps, but they totally understand our reluctance to move forward with an engineering study until we have a better picture of the project and the environmental impacts of the project. So we're kind of we're working with the Forest Service now, but we're not moving forward, and of course we're not before we bring this before the board. So we'll continue to work with PG&E on the switch station project, and before I move on, is there any questions on that?
Just staff's perspective, any surprises in this impact study? Is it exactly what you had anticipated? In particular, PG&E's description of its own scope of work, which is bound to be expensive?
I think throughout this project, PG&E has taken our lead. I think they've been very cooperative, and they took the lead for the three-terminal protection scheme. They took the lead with the single breaker. I think they've been more than forthcoming and very agreeable to the district's suggestions on the design. So I haven't. Yes, it's exactly what I expected, pleasantly.
That's good.
The only thing you might add to this is we do have a scheduled in-person meeting, right?
That was my next comment.
Okay.
If I can move on.
Please.
Working with PG&E on several issues, a response to the district request for information on the substation cost of ownership. What was existing, what improvements were made to the maintenance determination. So this is the work that was done at the two substations, Tiger Green and Salt Springs, by PG&E. The cost of that work, what was there before, what did they do, and the cost on that is $2.9 million. We're supposed to pay the O&M on that cost, and it's the district's belief that some of that work was already, some of those improvements were already there and they were replaced, and some of that cost should come from PG&E and the district. So that's one point that we'd like to discuss. District has requested a meeting with PG&E to discuss this and the evaluations of the risks and benefits of the switch station project. Board members will be present. That meeting is scheduled for July 27th in San Francisco.
Michael, one other thing on the system impact study. So I guess it's more of just a technical document, but I didn't see any place in there where it mentioned the possible need to move the switch station if their hydroelectric division needed to change the design of the dam and raise the water level or whatever they might do.
Yeah, we were sent a letter with that information in it. I don't remember seeing it in the system impact, but we have a specific letter that stated, we're approving this location, however, remember the following. And of course, we have all of those parameters already on any of our improvements, like for the dam. If they decide to raise the dam, we have to raise our line. But we have received a specific letter on that. And that ends my report on the switch station, unless there's any questions.
Any questions, comments from the board or audience on the efforts to comply with the transmission interconnection handbook? Hearing none, we'll move on. So 8E is discussion and possible action related to the district's research and efforts to improve the efficiencies and minimize the losses of each department as measured in the performance reporting. Welcome, Brandy.
Good morning. We will start with electric performance reporting this morning. June 2015, we saw a total system loss of 99,133 kilowatt hours, which was 26.95% of our total production for the month. Contributors to this loss are the distribution system losses, which we actually measure from our feeder relays. Those totaled 30,392, or 8.3% of our production, while the out valley loss, which is currently just a subtractive number, the total number minus all the rest of our losses, of 43,411, or 11.8% of total. So at the board's recommendation, we did consult with Dave Rightly on this out valley loss number and why this number is higher than we expected. He did get back to us in a letter or an email response, which is on page 78 of your packet. Basically, this says it's possible that the original estimate was low. It was based on, industry standards. But he also mentioned that the losses that we are seeing from the KM green and blue transformers remain steady throughout the year, or basically steady throughout the year, which is going to result in a higher percentage loss in the summertime when our production levels are low. He also suggested some changes to the programming of our OVS1 relay at the powerhouse, so that's where the out valley line comes into the powerhouse. If we are successful at implementing these changes in August when Dave comes out, we'll be able to directly compare the out valley production at the Cal ISO meter at KM Green to the relay there at the powerhouse, which would give us a direct comparison. So we would no longer be estimating that or subtracting it from anything else. We would have an actual number. So we are hoping to accomplish that in August. Also on electric, as we discussed earlier, Emerson will be out to certify all of the multipliers on our meter. So we'll be taking that step in August as well to confirm that our electric meters here in the valley are multiplied correctly. Can we move on to the next slide, please? We also are taking a look at our kilowatt loss per feeder. So these are the last 3 months of losses per feeder. And as you see, the commercial circuit has consistently been the highest. We plan to start our distribution system project, which will start later in July. It's just going to be a tracing of each of the circuits, and we hope to identify any additional possible problems on the commercial circuit through this distribution system project. Are there any questions on electric before we move on?
So this graph is just a subset of the total losses, right? It's not out valley transmission losses or anything else?
It's the distribution system losses from the previous
Right.
slide, just broken into the 3
And then they'll
feeders.
total up to what percentage of total?
Last month it was 8.3%.
You're right, well, I'd have to tell you there's something completely different between those 3 feeders. But
Well, no, it's, if you look at it as a percentage, then it doesn't look the same way.
What do you
so
mean?
Well, this is actual kilowatt hours, these aren't
This is
percentages.
kilowatt hours.
Right.
And so the commercial uses a lot more power than the residential.
Uh-huh.
So even if the losses were the same proportion, the absolute number would be higher.
Right.
And the total production numbers are much more higher, so these are much smaller percentages once you have a higher production.
Gotcha.
Hi, Nancy.
Could you just clarify where commercial is? I might think it's one thing, but obviously.
Commercial feeder.
Right, the commercial feeder is the plaza area. It is most of the condos, including, the Meadows, Edelweiss, Thimblewood. It is not the inn. That is on the residential feeder, as well as some of the snowmaking facilities out at the Caples Lake. But it is most of the condos, restaurants here in the valley.
Thank you.
We have a map, if you want to see it, from the committee meetings that show the 3 feeders. If you're that interested, we can show it to you.
Or if you want, we can give you a list of the meters.
We could do that as well.
The map's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Might even have.
But it does include some residential. Commercial is an aggregate, but it's not exact.
Yeah, so we were going to begin what we call our seeking project, or I should call it our locate project in residential, but we decided to move that over to commercial for obvious reasons, because we feel like we get the biggest bang of our buck to try to trace that down. It's all again about identification, knowing where our systems are working, what's hot, what's not hot. Not only can we identify problems, but there's a lot of things buried out there, and we really need to know where everything goes. And what we found in the past, I'm sure there's other things in the future that we're going to also find. We just need to trace out the lines and be confident that this goes to this, and that when we turn this off, it's not going to impact the rest of the valley. Right now, we have a pretty good idea of where things go, but we have to be very sure before we can transform our work that, if we kill a circuit, that it's going to actually be killed, and we're only killing those few houses, not the balance of the circuit.
Great. Keep going.
All right, if we move on to propane. Propane for this month, we had a 30,000 cubic feet unmetered total, which was 8% of our total for the month. If you look at this on a year-to-date, that's a 3% for the year. And what we are doing on propane to impact this unmetered total is we are starting a 10% meter change out. That'll start in August of this year. And we are focusing on the oldest residential meters. We have some 20-plus year old residential meters out there. So we'll be contacting customers. If you are one of those customers, we'll be contacting you to schedule a change out of your meter, which will require shutting down your propane system, changing it out, and relaying pilot.
And I just want to confirm, the newer meters will have a finer granularity?
They will not. We looked into that, and we were not able to find any meters that measure on a smaller cubic foot possibility. There are some that measure on gallons, but we're not able to find any of the current system that measure down to a single cubic foot or even a 10 cubic foot.
Right, you can find one that measures gallons in a small number?
We can find one that measures gallons.
Why would that be a problem?
It would just be an issue with our billing system, because we
Yeah, I know. I'll be happy to write something to convert it.
we can continue to look into that.
Okay.
You have to do it meter by meter though, right?
What? That's no problem at all. You can convert it to whatever you want.
Okay.
What is our,
The reason why I'm pushing this is since it's such a large number right now, if there's a propane leak in a house, we have to wait to a lot of propane before we can even notice that it's happening. Whereas with a water leak, we can detect a running toilet, an hour after it starts.
more granularity is better?
Yeah.
We'll look into this and
Okay.
turn to the board.
Okay.
So does it look like something dramatic changed between the earlier part of the year in June? Because your losses went up so much?
Propane is, is a moving target because of our,
Actually, I guess that's not true. I just can't see the numbers so quickly from that far away. I was thinking it was 14,000. It's 514,000.
it's 514,000.
Okay.
So
Withdraw the question.
our losses were 8% this month, but that over the course of the year does not look out of place.
Some of the issues with propane is that some of these numbers are variables due to temperature. So you have to take a temperature factor plus you have to do an altitude factor just to try to measure it. And if one of those factors are off, you end up with a different number. So it's not anywhere near as precise as, per se, water or electricity. It's we actually stand on a ladder and take these measurements, and we have to do the temperature factors on these measurements.
Also,
So-
looking at it in a percentage on a low month is different. Even it is 8% for June, but the 30,000 number loss isn't any higher than we receive in other months.
Sure. Low denominator issue. So 3% seems pretty good. What's our goal?
3%. We did not find an industry standard for propane, but we did talk to our supplier, and we were looking at a 2 to 4% over the last few years. Those losses include the propane that it takes to fire our vaporizers, and with that in mind, our supplier said that 2 to 3% was a reasonable goal for our system.
Okay. Let's keep rolling.
If we move on to water, this month we have a total system loss in water of 47,823 gallons, or 9%. Of that, 7% of those are unidentified losses. On a year-to-date basis, that's a 14% loss throughout our system throughout the year. If we could move to the next slide, I will talk about how that compares to the previous 5 years. We're right on track with what we saw last year at a unidentified loss of 171,486. What we've been doing to try to minimize this number is we've talked about metering the district facilities. So our district facility use is an estimate right now. And we did have our staff price out the cost for purchasing and installing meters on the district facilities. And currently, we found that comes to about $3,000, with the costliest being the CSV here, which is our largest user of water. We have 4 bathroom facilities, et cetera, here. So at this time, staff doesn't feel that it would get us a large reduction in our unmetered total to spend that money. We've also added into our performance reporting the tank level tracking, which has come up as a question several times. So our production number for June and going forward includes a beginning and end of the month inventory in our tanks, so that if the tank level is higher at the end of the month, we will not be considering that a loss.
Same thing we do with propane is inventory.
Sure.
Are there any questions on water?
From the board or audience? I like the fact that it's going down. That's good.
Thank you. And moving on to wastewater, our final performance report of the day. Our total system loss for this month was 458,709 gallons. A total system unmetered of 60% for the month. Unidentified system losses of 58% for this month, which gives us a 36% total for the year, when our goal is 15%.
Work to do.
Work to do. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. This shows us our comparison to the previous 5 years. So we are a little higher than last year, but it doesn't seem completely out of scope when you look at the previous 5 years. What we've done on wastewater is our staff completed an infiltration study. So they went out to the manholes in the valley and looked for places where a lot of water is infiltrating the system. We have a list of those, and we plan to install these covers in the high infiltration areas to see if we can't get our infiltration down, because in wastewater, water coming into the system, snow melt, rain, is really where our losses are. So we will be continuing to work on that in the upcoming year.
How many manhole covers are there, and what would the cost be to just put those sleds in every single one of them?
They're about $20-some a piece, $20 or $25 a piece, so they're not that expensive. There's certain areas that wouldn't work, roadways that wouldn't work. We have enough of a rise and a dip that they, unless it was set really lowly, they do have a lip on it, so we wouldn't want to raise that manhole and incur the wrath of a snowplow. But in any areas that our superintendent sees that we have a dip in our line and water could intrude, we put one of these in. And there is hundreds of manholes in the valley. There's a lot more than you think. It's every.
So $2,000 or something? You said $20 a sled?
Right. Yeah. Sled.
Well, given the magnitude of the problem, I encourage you to
We'll put in one
Be
everywhere
generous.
wherever we think.
wherever you think it might help.
So you mentioned, Michael, that you thought that those worked even in places where the manholes were submerged, like you got snow on top of them on the meadow and whatnot. Is that really true? I mean, it wouldn't seem like that could possibly seal.
It'll hold the water out and dissipate it to a great degree. It will dissipate it and move it away, especially with flowing water, because it'll have gravity to force it through. But yeah, and they're pretty thick. If you take a look at these are
Yeah, but
whole.
the question is how good the seal is, right? If you've got a perfect seal, you're going to keep out all the water. If you have, I don't know what you're putting on top of it, a concrete ring or something that's
A metal
metal.
lid that goes right on top of
You
it.
have the weight of the water on top and presumably the vacuum underneath.
It's probably not anywhere near 100%. It's but it's a good seal, and much better than what we have there now.
Is there a more perfect seal? Is there any solution that costs $40 instead of $20? It's like, you know, a bolt-down manhole cover or something that really.
We can look into that. I don't know of them. We're thrilled with finding this first solution, but we can look at
Yeah,
better.
at that price, I think you would be thrilled. That's pretty economical for installation.
And we'll continue to look at it, because that's just one entry. That's not the major entry of water into the collection system. Unfortunately, the major entry into the collection system is underneath asphalt, and it's breaks and lines. It's you know, where we have done enough televising that we actually know where we have, you know, major infiltration coming into our system. And you know, and it's a line like this, and water, you could just see water flowing in. So those are the major sources of infiltration. And it just costs money to dig them up and repair them, or pipeline, burst them, or whatever it might be.
And as you've reminded us a couple times, some infiltration is actually beneficial to the system.
Yeah, you know, so we're in membrane technology, so it's all, you know, it's basically forcing our wastewater through these tiny membranes that look like spaghetti holes. And if you foul them, if your influent is very thick, it takes a lot more electricity, a lot more maintenance to get through those. A dilute or thinner solution of wastewater is actually much easier to process. That has nothing to do with the biological sense of it, but it does have to do with the strength and the thickness of that, and how much we can get out through our hydrocore and other systems.
Any additional comments or questions?
I guess all I would say is none of that discussion. It just comes back to the original question that we had about all of these performance reporting topics. It's how much is it worth to solve the problem? You know, this one stands out because it looks like it's just you got almost no control over how much stuff is getting in there. But the answer is that after you crunch some numbers, you figure out it's not really so bad. It's not really worth spending very much money on it. Then you would be at a whole different place than if you decided, it really makes a big difference, it costs us a lot extra money to run the plant, and we can have some framework for having the discussion about how much does it make sense to spend to solve the problem. And in this case, I have no idea.
Well, I think it's a really good point. I will bring this back before the board and try to give you a better idea of the costs of impact. I certainly know the cost of repair. So, and in future boards, you know, this fell to the bottom of the priority list because the repair costs are so great, and they truly are. Digging up roads, you know, putting in this, even the pipeline, the pipelining and the pipe bursting that we've talked about, it's extremely expensive. So, you know, I know that cost, and we can give a report on what a plan is and what the plan that we have as far as, you know, doing this section and this section and this section. It's primarily on the far side, north side of KMA is where we have our primary problems. So we definitely know the repair, but whether, you know, what is that worth as far as electricity costs and wastewater costs? It's an excellent point.
Yeah, you got the cost and you don't have the benefits, so you don't know if it's worth the incurring costs. That's the question. So see if you can shed some light on that. I think that would be.
So on like electricity, same topic in the sense that if we lost 100,000 kilowatt hours, our incremental cost is what, 7 or 8 cents a kilowatt hour? So that's not the 65 cents that we charge our customers. It's our wholesale cost. Anything else on efficiencies? Moving on to 8F, discussion and possible action regarding resolving harmonics and other electric distribution power quality issues. I'm still on the hot seat, Brandy.
Still me. Exponential Engineering updated the power quality report based on the measurements that we took this spring at the chairlifts. It's on page 84 of your packet. The summary is the Out Valley project has improved things as far as harmonics goes in the valley to a certain degree, but we still have an issue. This graph here shows the Chair 5 total harmonic distortion. And this is a graph that shows the total number of occurrences during the recording. So how many times during our recording period it hit 1% distortion, 2%, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see 5% is our goal based on our IEEE 519 standard. And we have the 5% met 100 times or more during our recording. So what the recommendation for Exponential is that we work with Vail to come up with a plan, a long-term plan, to ensure that as new equipment and motors and chairlifts are added, that we are meeting the requirements set forth by our standards. Are there any questions on the updated report?
So is that recommendation that it's just as improvements are done to the lifts, or is it asking Casey and Vail to make those corrections sooner than they would otherwise be doing work on the lifts?
I think it's a both. I think that definitely, if any, you know, if Vail puts in any additional equipment out there, we'd ask that it be, you know, have a filter or is designed in such a way that it meets the IEEE standard. And then we certainly can look at the existing filters, how they're programmed. I've been working with Casey for quite a while as far as he's had people come out and he has a report forthcoming on their findings, and it was our idea is to, what's this report that just came out, and I've given it to Vail, and his report comes out, and he's had a chance to try to meld the two together and come up with a long-range plan. Additionally, I think that it's staff's recommendation that we, you know, come up with a policy on this, and you know, I think we have a policy, you know, come up with a game plan to mitigate this this harmonics. I mean, thank goodness the Out Valley project came in and it's lowered the problem to an extent, but anywhere that you have an issue, you need to address those issues. And I don't know if you want to expand, but I think that's what we talked about.
Well, I guess this sort of goes back to what Bob was saying with the other things, which is cost benefit. After the Out Valley project, we understood that it improved things. The question was, you know, we want Vail to invest in things that really have a good impact on the resort and on the community, and avoid investing in things that are marginal. The response back when I asked that question before was, these harmonics can be very damaging even at this level. So if these can be very damaging even at this level, then should we be asking that they be corrected sooner rather than later? Or are we saying, no, it's not that damaging at this level, and it's okay to wait until other work is going to be done anyway?
Well, the question you're raising is what's the benefit
Yeah,
of fixing the problem? You got a problem. You know how much it would cost you to fix it because you could come up with a plan to install filters and whatever, but you don't know what the benefit is. I mean, this draft doesn't
I think
show
that's
what
the
it is.
wrong question. There is a reason why there's a standard, and we're in violation of that standard, which means that there's equipment that can be damaged. So as opposed to saying, well, how much damage can we do, and let people apply for refunds. You know, my refrigerator broke a bunch of times due to power quality problems. It hasn't had since then. I think we should set a time frame, maybe 3 years, of saying, within this time frame, we should be, as a district, you know, everything should be under 5%. And the problem we have right now is we're all working this as friends. What other utilities do is they have a fee for compliance that makes it enough so people would be in compliance. I don't want to have to do that. I don't think we'll need it. But I think we should set a time frame for having our power quality at industry standards, and get a recommendation from staff and from Vail of what's a reasonable time frame to do it.
Yeah.
But not decide that, well, the damage may not be that too bad, so let's run out of compliance as a utility.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of what I'm asking, because, you know, given that what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years of the drought, and I know that Vail's reluctant to invest much money here at this point, I mean, it could be 10 years. Is 10 years okay? Or is it 3 years to be compliant with industry standards? Is that what we should be doing?
I think we should ask our staff and Vail to sort of say, what's a reasonable time frame to be in compliance, and then see what we find out.
Yeah, since this report came out on June 18th and we just received it, I've asked for that time to be able to work with Vail and come up with a reasonable time frame. And Exponential definitely did not state in their recommendations to only do new equipment as it came in. They recommended that we comply with the industry standard. He didn't give any time frame. I think that's up to management and the board to approve such a time frame and a plan. I mean, we need to come up with a plan.
Okay. Well, I'm confident that since it's resolution of harmonics is one of its objectives, that we're going to come up with Any other questions from the board or audience on the harmonics issue?
Well, I'd like to speak. Casey Blank. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today, of course, and we definitely want to be good members of the community, as I stated in front of the East Meadows group, and in specific to harmonics and filtering. And we definitely feel that you know, we want to take full acknowledgement of the fact that of the existing filtering, we want to get that up to case, because even though you have filtering, it can be tuned or detuned, or it cannot be in proper operating specifications. And so that's our first commitment, to get our existing equipment up to speed and making sure that it's working properly. Looking forward, we see the benefit of when we're still working on, as Michael commented, to our own power quality study. There were some questions about some of the information we received about Chair 4. And Chair 4 will be probably our next challenge to take on, being the size of the motor that it is. So we're definitely working with we want to work with the community and with the PUD, of course, and bettering our situation as it is. So we're definitely committed to that.
Thank you. From my perspective, I think we've made good progress on this meeting. When I first joined the board, there was harmonics issues and reactive energy. Reactive energy kind of went away, largely with the Out Valley, and or we concluded that we didn't have a problem. And Now, this problem is significantly diluted, so, and Casey's just said what he said, so I'm confident we're going to get this boogeyman slayed before the end of the year. The end of fiscal year 2016.
So by the end of this fiscal year, we have a plan and a time frame.
8G, update and possible action regarding the aquifer levels in the treatment of well number 2 of the community water supply. I assume you're standing in for Assistant Manager Ansel.
I am. Assistant Manager Ansel is cleaning up the lodge as we speak. So, really appreciate the use of that lodge and everything, and for being our good neighbors. And we've got staff over there making sure that it's returned for them.
I'll just interject that my biggest surprise yesterday is when I got home, my wife said at 2:30 we had to make a decision. So I said, she said to Michael, I suggest you make a decision, and the decision should be move into the lodge, and if Casey doesn't give approval, blame it on Standish. So,
I love that.
yeah. It's a true story.
Continuing on with aquifer, so staff continues to track our aquifers closely. I think it's a subject that we really need to keep at heart. Mid-month, we did see a drop in well number 2. It went from 28 feet to 26 feet, but it has held at 26 feet ever since. Wells 4 or 5 continue to hold, and they're up near 160 feet. So that is a great improvement over the 99 feet that we saw in December 2014. And our changing in our pumping levels, our methodology of pumping has helped reserve that aquifer for if needed in this fall. This wet spring has definitely helped our aquifer levels. It has been super, yesterday notwithstanding. With the spring rains, well 2, as I mentioned, continues to be our main water supplier. And we have continued our sodium hydroxide feed at well 2 with positive results. We have seen that the pH rates have risen throughout the valley as planned, and our dosage rates have been reduced. So we have got the mixing in, and I think that we have it at a good maintenance level now. So I feel good about our aquifer. We have made several exceptions to our water stage alert system. One was the reseeding of the area right around the mountain club. They put some wildflowers out there. Another was for their mowed street sweeping, which was completed before the 4th of July weekend. Another was for some dust control, as a contractor brought a bunch of cinders into the valley. We hope to benefit from these cinders as well, because they're going to redo the shoulder of the road where we've had some issues with the slurry actually from the valley line showing. So that's going to be a problem that we're going to be able to see. And we actually sold some water to the contractor that's doing the road repairs on 88, but just pretty minimal amounts at this point. And we define the amounts of water that's going to be used, put that amount in writing as far as how much can be used, and then we monitor it. So it's not just an open faucet. So in this way, I think we're managing our water supplies and making sure that we don't have.
Can you remind me what the ideal pH level is? 7.0. And well 2 was too low previously.
6.8.
Okay. For some reason I thought it was too high. Okay.
Yeah, we get a higher.
Well, it was too acidic.
Too acidic. Yeah. Okay.
So unless there's any questions, I can move into another water subject, but that concludes my report on well number 2 and all.
Questions, comments from the board? Nancy?
I'm just curious, Michael, what, with this drought and the State Water Resources Board, every time you turn around there, something new is being mandated or required. Do we have to report any of this information to them? We do.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Michael?
Yeah, so we have to report any changes to our system, but the mandate that we report our conservation efforts compared to 2013. There was a mandate of you take a June through September period of what you did in 2013 and compare it to your savings in 2015. That's for the larger water suppliers. For the small water suppliers, all we have to do is comply with the 2 times a week. In the future, we may need to report, so we're keeping that data because they've said, you don't have to turn it in right now, but be prepared that in the future you're going to, be managing to the 25%, and we might want to see what your efforts are. But as a small water provider, we just have to cut back and follow the guidelines like no washing of impervious surfaces, no watering in the middle of the day, 2 times a week, fixing irrigation leaks, the normal barrage.
Because the other thing that I recently read that if you, and I may not be stating this correctly, but well drillers always had to present reports to the state, and these reports had always been private, and now suddenly they're going to be public. And the way I understand it is they hope to be able to figure out where water is, where water is coming from. So I was just wondering if that had any impact on the district. Has the district been asked to produce any of that information?
In our permits, in our well permits, we have a well driller's permit. That's exactly what it's called. Okay. It talks about the geological surfaces that they go through, right, and then what they do down there. So they talk about what they encounter, and then where they set the pump, what tore and sleeve. All that information is public. It's all in our well permit. So there's also a groundwater management study that looks at all of the water that influences your water supply, and that's also something that we're working with the state on. But a well driller's report would have something that would be something you'd want to look at if you were looking at a groundwater management report.
I'm just worried about where it's all going. I love the fact that we have our water, and I'm just worried that when other people find out we have water, that it may go someplace else.
Right. Anything else on wells and aquifers?
Can you just comment on the compliance to the irrigation, time of day by our customers?
I think we're doing very well. I saw, as soon as we see something, we call them. We saw something at the rec center the other day and called them, and people are very willing if they don't know about the rule. I've had no problem. I'll call someone as soon as it happens, and in a couple hours they're complying. And we have very few irrigation meters even turned on this year. We've only been doing it by request, so we're definitely saving water.
8H is discussion and possible action regarding a feasibility study of providing electric and water services to a snowmaking system at the Timber Creek area. Michael, that's you.
So this is a feasibility study, and I wanted to bring this before the board to solicit your direction to continue on our research or to do otherwise. Vail has approached the district on the possibility of using domestic water at the Timber Creek for snowmaking. The supply would come out of a hydrant on the southeast corner of the parking lot. The electrical, we have checked, we have available electrical for a single fan gun and potentially additional demand, and if confirmed. Fed off the existing Chair 9 meter, a room available for another disconnect. We have existing connections there, so we don't see much of a problem supplying electric to the general site. For water, potential source of water, as I mentioned, is at the corner of the Chair 9 parking. We would put in a traffic-rated utility box located near the isolation valve for the fire hydrant, put in a meter, 2-inch valve, and then stub it out for a connection to the Vail resorts. Water installation estimate is about $5,000 in material plus staff time to put it in. There's a whole bunch of issues with this that needs to be determined. I've listed some on page 95 of your. The biggest variable would be this is all about supply. this is how much water can you actually give. I mean, I think everybody understands the need of Timber Creek snowmaking and not having dump trucks driving down, up and down the road, dumping snow on the bottom there. But do we have the supply so that we're not, endangering the community water supply or fire service? So the idea that we've discussed with Vail is the possibility of using the Daneberg tank as a storage reservoir and actually utilizing a specific amount of water out of the Daneberg tank. And once that's utilized, you have to wait until it gets recharged, or a footage. So you get 5 feet of room. And once you're down to that, it's over, because that's our fire storage. And once that recharges, then you can start using that. And in the fall, when they need this water, possibly the district has the water that we can sell off the top. The rate that we sell it for snowmaking, I think we need to actually look at our costs, and I think it's a good idea if we revisit our cost for pumping water, which is what the irrigation rate was meant to be in the first place, and try to see if we could do this not only for a benefit of the area, but also selling water and electricity. So, with that, I bring it open, and I'm sure Casey has some comments as well. I hope I iterated that correctly.
Yeah, if I may,
Sure.
Casey Blind again.
We could hear.
No, this is not without precedent. Actually, when I was snowmaking manager back in my previous life at Heavenly, we bought water directly from STPUD, as they currently do today, and pulled water out of what we call the Keller tank, which is near the California base area, for snowmaking needs in the California base area. And so we would monitor, working with STPUD, the water levels prior to operation and then throughout the operating period, so as to, if we dropped it down to a certain level, they would call us up and we would shut off our operations. We see a very similar opportunity, if allowed, here working with KMPUD to operate and have a fan gun, a very low impact, in our opinion, way of operating to make snow. The noise decibels and such are nothing, or less than an operating car, if it were to be running outside your window. So basically, we think it's a great opportunity to make snow in an area which we previously haven't had the chance, and to reduce, if not totally eliminate, I hope, the transport of snow from our current existing Times Square area over in the village, via dump truck, and backed up and dropped into the Timber Creek area. So we're hoping we have the opportunity to do this.
Casey, do you have any guesstimate as to how many either gallons or acre feet or something like that, cubic feet of water that would be needed?
Well, best guess, those guns, the fan guns is what I'm talking about. They have their own onboard air compressor, of which we need the electrical connection as well. 100 gallons a minute is a general operating parameter that they go by, but it can fluctuate. And if obviously you have a good, what we call, window of temperature, which is somewhere around 24 degrees and less, you can actually use more than that. What we're liking to see, I hope, is that and it's all about incoming pressure, water pressure. What we have there is roughly, I believe, around 100 psi, 120 psi. Yeah, which, that's kind of on the low end of the scale. We'd prefer, upwards of like 300 psi. So it may require an additional booster pump. So we're going to go is, hoping that, excuse me, incoming intake pressure to the gun is such that it will function appropriately. The colder it gets, the more efficient you are. So if it's in the teens, we're even better. So broad speak, sorry Eric, I'm an ex-snowmaker, so I talk too much on stuff like this, but we're hoping that around 100 gallons a minute is the minimum.
Per gun or total?
Yeah, and we're thinking, we'll start out with just one fan gun down there, place it somewhere near the bottom of Chair 9, and then be able to move it with a snowcat to the locations appropriate. Again, if everything is perfect, we would be hoping to start this around 1st of December, and for about a 2-week window until we're able to open Timber Creek, which generally opens sometime about mid-December.
And when you're making snow, do you find that, like, what you've been normally doing is like 8 hours out of every 24 hours are amenable to snowmaking?
Yeah, unfortunately here in California, that's generally the window. Colorado, you flip the switch and it goes 24 hours, you know, and they have that cold temps, but, and it all depends, but we're hoping, you know, a 10 o'clock at night to 6 a.m. window, you know, is generally kind of what we've achieved. But we'll see.
So
We'll be optimistic.
ideally, it'd be 8 hours at 100 gallons a minute
Yeah.
for 2 weeks.
Yeah, for a couple weeks. And God willing, maybe
So-
Mother Nature helps us.
So Bob Epstein is now calculating the acre feet.
I was working on the revenue, let me do it.
All right. Oh, boy.
I think, I'm very encouraging. I think we should look at this and make it happen.
I absolutely
Yeah,
agree.
absolutely.
As well. It's just, it is a little, I mean, it's obviously a great benefit to us, but it's just sort of a shame, isn't it, that Vail can't use all of its water that it has rights to from Caples.
Well, not without digging a trench.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's coming at the wrong point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just.
And just to share with you, and you know, we've had this internally, but I think it's fair to share with you folks, is I priced out initially how much it would cost to bring snowmaking over into the Timber Creek area, and it's well above 6 figures. So yeah, the investment is a challenge.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Have we made any progress in pursuing the use of reclaimed water for snow flow? Or is that still in progress?
Well, we certainly have, we investigated, we found that there is 3 other resorts in the world that actually do it, but it's not really widely used. I don't know if you have a comment as far as Vail resorts.
It hasn't been something that's been looked upon with, you know, advantageous favor by, you know, our clientele. The feedback we've gotten, you know, internally has been pretty negative, but anyway, I'll leave it at that.
So we have worked with Ann Olson from the state recycling, not only for the possibility of this, but also for the use of a truck or a trailer for landscape use. And so we've gotten a booklet. But they're very, they actually return your calls. Ann actually retired and referred us to the new gentleman that we're working with. So it's not like it was before. So this is
It's a new era in that looking at reclaimed water, especially in the state of California.
Yeah, it's a whole new game. From what we did in 2009, Peter, it's a different ballgame.
Okay.
So you're looking for consensus on the direction, and the consensus is positive. Keep proceeding to make it happen this winter if possible.
Thank you.
8I is discussion and possible action regarding Kirkwood Capital Partners' proposed parking lot adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant and the Meadow and Vail Resorts proposed parking project on Kirkwood Meadows Drive.
So there's 2 projects in the works, so I expanded this, agenda title. Kirkwood Resort Development, as you know, is proposing parking lot to the north of the wastewater treatment plant. TriTac has held a meeting on this regard. The district submitted a list of questions and concerns, and we went out to the community and requested their support of our questions and concerns, and we received 281 letters of support and many good comments along with that. Additionally, many members of the community have actually written directly to TriTac, and those, all of those records are on the TriTac page, which is a portion of the El Dorado County website. So there is a link on our page to that TriTac site. So the 2 documents that have been previously forwarded, there was a list of questions. The TriTac has continued the item so KRD could supply additional info, that being a vicinity map, a better description, and an alternate analysis and justification analysis. We'll continue to be involved in the public review, but to date, KRD has not supplied these documents to TriTech, and so TriTech has removed it from the July 10th agenda. So right now, there is an item on the TriTech agenda for July 10th, but it has to do with a tower over here at Volcano. This is not on the agenda, so I don't know when the next time this will come up. So before we move on, is there any questions on the school site parking lot proposal?
On page 99, there's a Kirkwood parking and traffic management update from June 1st. Who wrote that?
That would be Dale.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Is that a separate agenda item, or should I ask a question about that now?
That is, well, it's not a separate, it's the second.
Okay, I'll wait.
So we continue to be involved in the school site parking. We still have the same stance. We're looking at it from the safety and environmental aspects.
Great. Any questions from the board or audience in the first part?
I have a question that came up at the homeowners meeting
For
yesterday.
protocol and etiquette, you're supposed to identify yourself.
This is Libby Culver.
Thank you.
About the prior studies that were done and the recommendation of the Board of Supervisors that any parking addition to Kirkwood be done through parking structures. That was a new issue for me, at least. And I wondered if there was any discussion on that.
Mike, would you care to respond?
Sure, Libby, yes, it's included in the specific plan. There's a statement in there that parking structures should be considered on future. And I think that was one of the avenues that the founders of the 2003 specific plan forced off, and along with additional parking throughout the resort. And they actually have a map in there, I believe. And but yeah, that's definitely one of the alternative structures.
And has it been discussed significantly in the past? I mean, currently?
That would be more of a Kirkwood resort.
In terms of?
In terms of you're looking at that as possibilities, can you give me just any more information on that?
Sure. I mean, there are various options and alternatives for parking that we're looking into, and we actually, for a recommendation by the board here in Standish of organizing a group to look at what options and alternatives. And so we have met a couple of occasions and discussed, what our ideas are in terms of, where we're focusing and where we're looking to, add additional parking, whether it be surface parking or, potential covered parking, in the future. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So going into the next subject, of course, Vail has parking needs, and they have actually, we had a parking committee meeting that Standish called for here at the district, and then Casey called an additional meeting. We met up at the Red Cliff Lodge, recently discussed, I would say, an overall picture of parking, specifically on Kirkwood Meadows Drive. And I don't know if you want to comment on that meeting and the outcome, but besides myself, we had community members, Alan Sapp, Jeff Smith, Nancy DeVette, Judy Flynn were all there, along with Casey and R.O. Anderson and Andrew Strain from the resort. So if you'd like to summarize.
Sure. We got together informally as a group, and with the idea of, being as, I hate the term transparent, it seems to be used everywhere nowadays. It's like low-hanging fruit. I hate those terms, but anyway, it seems like it comes out of my mouth all too frequently. But we did get together and discussed what our options and alternatives are, and what we shared with the group, and we had some aerial photos, which I think were very enlightening over the years of from '92 right through the current day, and it really showed how development has occurred here in the valley and how incrementally there's been a reduction in actual parking spaces, especially since 2003 when the specific plan was stated and the actual number of spaces. And then we had our engineer, R.O. Anderson, who had done work for me previously going clear back into the early 90s in a different capacity, and his term here and showing what his actual physical engineering through the specific plan of what a actual space consists of, the width and length, and what actually exists out there today. And we're behind where we should be. And incrementally, as development is now currently taking place over in Timber Creek, it's going the wrong direction, unfortunately. And so what we're hoping to do is to look at the situation as it exists today and look at options and alternatives which seem to make sense to us, and communicate that out through the community and see where we can work together to benefit our guests and residents in giving a better, safer, more efficient way of approaching the parking situation. So that's where we are.
Any comments or questions from the board?
I guess the specific direction you're going on the Kirkwood Meadows Drive topic would be the obvious question.
Sure. What we're looking to do is to get an opportunity to provide what already exists, and I'll just put a number on it because everybody seems to be inclined with numbers, but roughly there's 450 parking spaces is what we've been able to achieve on Kirkwood Meadows Drive, and it's been historically there. It's been there for people who've been parking on the road for as long as I can remember, driving out here since I arrived in the early 80s. But what we're looking to do is to take the already acknowledged easement out to not what can ultimately be decided, which is 80 feet roughly, and which is on kind of both sides from center line, but to not take into the west side as much as what's already kind of anticipated, but build out to mostly what's on the east side and achieve somewhere around 686 spaces, I believe is what R.O. Anderson acknowledged. And we have a set of plans, which we're working with the KMA specifically, and Nancy said it on a recent meeting, but to look at what our options exist. And the feedback was, and from people that live right alongside there, they had some concerns about a number of things, and one of them being striping. They don't want it to look like a parking lot as you come into Kirkwood Meadows, and along Kirkwood Meadows Drive. And so we're taking feedback, and we certainly will do it up to design standards, for drainage, for appropriate issues that I know the PUD is concerned about, and protection for utilities and fire hydrants and such that are there. So we'll take everything into consideration, pave it. It won't be dirt or even grindings. It'll be pavement out to the width necessary, and we think it could be a very nice improvement, quite honestly, versus what exists today, as you see it. And I'm not opposed to not seeing striping. Actually, the county were the ones that wanted us to stripe it, by virtue that I think they thought we'd stick too many cars in there versus what they felt was the appropriate standard. So we're open-minded, but it's just the first phase of the discussion. And ultimately, if we had our likes, we would get the permitting in process to the point where we were to actually be able to start working towards it next summer.
Good.
So that's our plan.
Bob, you have a comment?
Yeah, so on the parking capacity, so the current number is 2,400 and dropping.
Yes.
Because of mostly the Chair 9 area cutting into the parking lot there.
There's a number of things, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what's the target number that you need to be at to handle a peak load?
Well, the more the better. I mean, I hate to be vague about it, but...
Are we off by 5,100?
Bob loves numbers.
Yeah.
No, it's, we would love to get on the better side of it. I'm not going to say we're, way off, Bob, but a few hundred spaces would improve our situation to get us from the 450 to 686 on the roadway would be a move in the right direction.
Okay, and then on Kirkwood Meadows Drive, obviously the maximum number of spaces is parking at a right angle, but that would require people to back into traffic while everyone's exiting. So how do you reconcile leaving a parking space and still allowing traffic to flow at the end of the day?
Sure, and I don't know if you still have a set of plans, but we offered Michael a set of plans previously, and for Rick and he to look at and give comment to, and which it took into consideration the 90-degree parking versus a 75-degree versus parallel parking. So we've addressed those concerns, and Part of it is that, and you mentioned it a few minutes ago, the traffic and parking and traffic management plan, I think I wrote, is the name of it.
Yeah.
Which is mainly just an operational plan that we already have in place. And so it was just sharing with the community what we've already been doing, as a management group and having appropriate staffing out there. So, yeah, I mean, it's not just that we want to park as many people as we can and have the staff out there to make that happen, then we all go away. We know we own it from the moment they come into the valley to the moment they leave. And so we'll have, and we're dedicated to having staffing and appropriate services rendered, including shuttle service, including garbage management, including everything, to the best degree possible we can. So,
Okay, thanks.
I hope that helps.
Any other comments from the board? Nancy?
So this may or may not be appropriate, but at KMA's meeting yesterday, we had a meeting after the meeting, annual meeting, and we had the opportunity to see a conceptual plan, design plan that looks prettier, more attractive. And so I don't know whether we'll be sending that to Vail to take a look at it. It would, I think, help soften what's being proposed. And ironically enough, we actually had a homeowner who lives down in Chicken Feathers and looked at the plans and says, it looks like the road's going right through the middle of my house. So, we can talk about that, but, it was like, oh my gosh. So, the plans, I guess, could use a little bit of work and further communication to the community. He was just taken back. He says, oh my gosh, how's that going to happen?
Oops. One other thought, not to put words in your mouth, but I think when you and I talked briefly about the Kirkwood Meadows Drive work, you said, as I recall, that there were actually some advantages from PUD's perspective to having that implemented in terms of how our physical equipment over there is integrated into the overall picture.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen our utility vaults along the side, and I would think that any enhancement, 4 stakes sitting up, in the middle of a dirt pad would be an enhancement. So access to our utility vaults would be a plus. No parking in front of certain vaults. Of course, no parking in front of fire hydrants. Better access to fire hydrants. So there could be definite improvements, to the utility infrastructure going down Kirkwood Drive.
Great. I'll just make 2 comments. One, from a PUD perspective, which is probably what I should limit it to. It is just the safety issues and the access to utilities and emergency egress and access of vehicles and so on. So I think
and we would add into that just water quality
and water quality runoff. Those are the specific issues.
Right.
As a member of the community, the homeowners, I just think in this valley, any additional surface parking is the wrong answer. Whether that's financially feasible to do alternatives, I don't know. But it's just the wrong answer. So everything's going to be a compromise if it's surface parking. I mean, a compromise to what is, those roads could be made better without more surface parking. But, and I think the specific plan says encourage, not just consider, but encourage structured parking. The structured parking costs money. Somebody has to be willing to pay for it. So, I think it's just going to be a contentious issue whenever and wherever it comes up, and that's just what's going to have to be managed and discussed and made as good as possible, I suppose.
But I'm glad you brought up the question, because as the district, we should limit our involvement to safety and water quality, which is,
Right.
And the other thing I would add in, maybe this is one more additional question, when I was involved in a possible parking structure in Berkeley, the quotes I was getting was $40,000 capital cost per vehicle on a multi-story building, and that's not in a snow area. So the cost effectiveness of free parking at over $40,000 a space for a multi-story building, I don't know how realistic.
Well, but that is, of course, why you see places like Stanford University with limited land and so on, going to structured parking and then charging for the parking.
Yeah.
It's just reality.
Right. I tried to figure out a reasonable return on capital at $40,000 per stall. And they don't park here year round. I just think that I can, we were concerned earlier about don't spend too much on harmonics if it isn't cost effective. I just think people should know that the cost of a multi-story, which is different than like one story with a covered roof, which is kind of premium sort of thing. It's hard to figure out how you could ever afford it.
We have to factor in some other issues too, like the reduction of snow removal. That there's a cost reduction there. I'm not saying it's going to pay for it, but there are other factors that you have to figure in. And also the potential for putting a solar array on top of a parking structure.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
yes,
it's a complex issue.
Yeah, but yeah.
I guess my own 2 cents is I would look favorably on and try to support a Vail-led parking plan.
Right.
Meaning if you guys have the most to gain or lose and know the most about operating ski resorts, and so if there's an integrated plan that you develop and takes into consideration comments from the community, I'd look to try and support that. Whereas, that's in contrast with the KCP initiative where they presented at least one affected homeowner a map of 90 parking spaces and then had 193, and I think their motivations are pretty, let's use your word, transparent. So I have a different view in terms of support for their plan than I do for a Vail-led integrated plan. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
So I think Bob's and Eric's comments are right on as far as the districts. So we have the district's responsibility here. So we'll have a review process that we need to go through. We've already looked at these plans a couple of times. I'd like your permission to put this back on the agenda and show the plans. But what we need to be looking at for the district is, does it meet our fire safety? Does it meet utility access? Is there parking around fire hydrants? Those type of infrastructure demands that we would do for any project. Leave the public review process. We could still be involved, but we need to go through our purview, get the board's input on that. So if it's all right, I'll bring this back before the board, show the plans on the wall, maybe have a set that you can really look at, and then get comments from staff and the fire chief as far as access to our utilities. Right. Please.
I just wanted to clarify something. I haven't had a chance to look at the rendition of the parking plan in here, but I'm curious, Casey, whether the KCP's school site numbers are in the plan. Are they incorporated into this new master parking plan that you?
The traffic and management plan?
Yeah.
No, that did not have it. It just had it as of what we did last winter.
Okay. But is that a plan that's still in process that might include that?
I'm sorry, Nancy, I'm missing the question.
So I'm trying to figure out, we know what you had over here, you're losing it. And so this, to replace this, was supposed to be the school site. So I'm trying to understand, in your overall plan, if you don't have this, are you looking at that as places to park?
Well, we are hoping to achieve a no net zero loss,
Okay.
I guess, basically. So right now, we're going backwards,
Right.
in terms of, if they continue to construct and we don't have any additional parking, yes, we're even going worse than where we sit today on those numbers. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's a possibility in those.
Well, we're hoping not to go backwards
Yeah,
anymore.
okay, I got it. Got it.
Well, the other advantage of an integrated plan, especially if it's led by you folks, is when we had the TriTac meeting, there was a lot of concerns about sort of piecemeal changes. And so maybe we'll reword this agenda going forward, where it's Vail's parking plan with KCP as a component, as opposed to focusing on KCP. Is there anything else on 8I parking?
Yeah, there's one other issue that I'd like the board's direction or input on. At the end of the meeting that Casey had, he threw it open to the members present on whether this should continue as a group of buddies or should this be, or should this be a public meeting? You know, as the board originally formulated this was a public meeting, one of the ad hoc meetings of the district. And I think there was no clear consensus that I could see at the end of the meeting. I think there's pros and cons for both. But I said that I would bring it up before the board to see if they had any input on whether they'd like, you know, give input to Vail on whether they'd like to see this to be a public PUD committee or let it go as a bunch of buddies. I think the comments were, you know, if it is a PUD committee, the benefit is it's, you know, more open and public. If you want input, you're going to get it open and public format. However, on the other hand, parking is not a primary concern of the district. So I wanted to open up that and let you give
Any thoughts?
I guess my first one is if it was a group of buddies approach, why couldn't that be a public forum as well? That what we think is a logical leadership role of Vail, and recognizing that as the centerpiece, but not letting go of the inevitable need to have community involvement because it's just such a sensitive topic. You know that only do well.
I'd offer my opinion on that. I mean, we are the only public entity that's integrated into the valley with elected officials. But at the same time, I'd rather keep our scope to what it's supposed to be. And I'm very reluctant to be the organized, you know, to be the agency looking at parking as a topic. So I think we're much better off. You know, I don't mind getting it started, but I think we should leave it really to Vail to sort of say what works best for them, and not have this be something that's sponsored by the district.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I guess that if Vail were to invite us to help facilitate
that's fine.
Public discussions and bring public into it, I would welcome that invitation. But it's really up to Vail or
Yeah.
KCP or others, because it's not in our charter to deal with parking, with land use planning and parking, other than as it affects our services. You know, TriTac and the county should be ideally be doing a better job of these things, but you know, we're too far away for them to care that
The
much.
county lines need to be redrawn.
So, yeah.
Put it in one county.
So I think that at invitation, but I don't think that we have the authority to basically establish a committee and so on our own to do it.
So that direction is for us to move out of the committee business, right?
Thank you for your input.
Is that, would you prefer us to be in the committee business or not in the committee business for this topic?
I just wanted to hear your opinions.
Yeah,
I think I
you're
respect your.
If you ask us for help, we will provide it, and otherwise we don't want to create.
Yeah, I think we're directly affected by the school site.
Yeah.
A lot more than by Kirkwood Meadows Drive.
As long as you can get access, you know, fire emergency, that we haven't created a problem.
Right. So I think the direction is to move out of the PUD parking committee business. You comfortable with that, Michael?
Yeah, once again, I just wanted your input.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
For clarification, but that, I mean, I'm sure Casey would extend an invitation to Michael, but so to participate. So as a board, you're not discouraging Michael's participation in this other role in Vail's committee?
Not at all.
No,
Okay.
we need it from the perspective of our own interests.
We're an effective party.
Sure.
We're
Okay.
just not the
Got it.
committee provider.
Yeah, we're not a city.
Libby.
Libby Culver, considering everything that you've just previously talked about, as a community member, I would like to see the board offer Casey the advantage of your room with your microphones and your,
That would be fine with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that we can do to
to
assist.
facilitate
We'll get Kelly.
community input, when Casey gets to the point that he wants community input.
I think our point is we want to be asked to assist, and then we'll readily do it.
Right, but since you are the only public forum up here, it would be nice to have public forum facility to facilitate community input when Casey's ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fine with me.
Yeah.
Good idea.
All right, Gil.
Moving on
Don't
to
get killed.
J. Discussion and possible action regarding cleanup and beautification needs in the Kirkwood Valley. Michael.
The board has asked staff to ramp up its efforts on beautification. We have cleaned up our Loop Road landscaping. I don't know if it's place, but as you drive into Loop Road there, we cleaned up the area. We're watering it on a regular basis. I think it really looks nice, what we did several years ago. With a cooperative effort with Vail, we're trying to extend that screening across here to try to visually, hide the parking lots here. And if you'll notice on your way out, or you're driving, you'll notice that there's these plants along that berm there are doing quite nicely. We've been watering those with a microfill system, so it's a very small amount of water going in, but they're doing quite well. And I think that when you drive over there and took a look to the left, it looks really nice. And Vail and I have talked, Casey and I have talked about possibly extending that screen even further down. I don't think it would take a lot of time or effort to actually extend that. So that's just a feasibility thing we're looking at. We've reached out to KRD to clean up the school site parcel. We've also reached out, Vail has cleaned up this corner out here. They've moved some metal around, and Volcano actually has parked their equipment in the construction. Slowly but surely, we're trying to take a look at things with a clean eye, and we would recommend or look for the district input on any other areas that we can attack and try to clean up as far as that visual corridor.
Did you ever get any response from KCP or KRD to your offer to help clean up the boneyard?
No, I did not. I only put out the one request, though. I don't know if you want me to continue to knock on that door.
Well, we just met the new person, right?
Yeah, the new person would be a very logical person to approach it.
Yeah.
So at KMA's meeting, we specifically asked Nate, and John was there yesterday, about cleaning up that site, and could there be some accelerated cleanup without the development of the school site. And the long and short of it was, it wasn't going to happen. So I guess I would encourage the district to put whatever pressure it can on John to change that vision.
So not having been in that meeting, is it fair to say that Nate was the one who was saying that it wasn't going to happen?
Exactly,
Okay,
and John
so-
stood right beside him.
Yeah.
I was right beside him when he
I
said
think you got to put that in the category of the new guy doesn't necessarily have a grip on what the issue is, and we got to go and explain it to them.
Now, I can tell you that George Stahl, who is KPS, who was here earlier with John, he's well aware of what the issue is. And so it's, John, as I understand it, John comes and goes. So, I mean, I guess the district meets with George periodically, so wherever the pressure can be placed from a community perspective would be wonderful.
Yeah, John will be joining us in those meetings. Nancy, so we'll have regular contact.
Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the cost to clean that up is, manpower and, the use of our equipment, and then dumpsters. $456 a dumpster to haul that stuff out of here. So, it wouldn't take long for a Dave Waddle to eyeball it and say that's, 15 dumpsters or whatever it might be, and come up with, a cost, and we could bring that to the board to, ask KCP to contribute to that cost.
I think they ought to pay for it outright, not contribute to it. It's their responsibility, number one. Number two, since we would be asking them to pay for it, I don't think you need the board's say-so to proceed forward to giving an unsolicited bid to John to explain to him what would be involved and to explain to him why we think it's important. And I would say that at this point, I would suggest that the board authorize Michael to go do exactly those steps.
Which is, one, come up with a cost
Come up
estimate.
with a proposal that Dave Waddle did something, and then Michael to pick up the phone and call John and explain to him why it's important to the community and what it would cost to resolve it with our graciously offers help at the price of blank.
I'd support that.
I think any cost estimate has to be recognize the potential liability of this transformers and whatnot. I think that's the biggest expense, is the old transformers that are over there. That's my personal opinion, what that would cost to remediate. Other stuff is pretty incidental.
And maybe misrecollecting this, I thought at some point somebody had been over there and looked and concluded that there was no
PCB
transformer, PCB exposure. I don't know if that's.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, we took a look at it, we couldn't tell, we could tell that there didn't appear to be any leaking, but we didn't know if there's any exposure there, so. Peter has a real good point, that would have to be confirmed.
To me, that's the biggest expense is the transformers. There's a propane tank, there's a fuel tank, maybe some vendor would be interested in hauling those off at their cost to get a tank.
Well, it's still usable, but
Yes. To me, the transformers are the biggest liability.
And maybe this doesn't have to be 100%, maybe this is.
Just do a percentage of cleanup.
Exactly, not touch, I've had some dealings with transformers and PCBs and such. I'd rather not do that again.
So you could make
cable spools and stuff can be dismantled, and that's pretty straightforward.
So what we're suggesting, I think, is that we don't give them a complete quote. We give them a selected quote.
Right, itemize it if you can.
Yeah, because once you touch it,
you own it. And a related topic is, did you ever consult with Amador County about any pressures they could bring for them to clean up that site?
No, I haven't, but I will.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's time for maximum pressure, if that's what was said yesterday at KMA's meeting.
Levying a nice fine for maintaining a unlicensed dump site or something like that.
Yeah.
Example of pressure. Yeah. I think that's a good question to ask the county.
Anything else on cleanup?
And if there's any other areas that the board sees you'd like us to look at, we'll be happy to. We are making progress on that.
8K is discussion of possible approval of general manager objectives for 2015-16. I'd like to move that to after 11, after we do the closed session. And then that brings us to general manager. And I'd like to move closed session to the end, as we discussed. So that brings us to general manager's report.
Matt Wheeler has resigned from Bennett Engineering. So our water and wastewater engineer is no longer with us. I have a meeting with Bennett Engineering. I think it's Orrin Bennett. So scheduled for the 14th of this month to meet his team. We are also pursuing other avenues if we determine. At this point, staff would like to continue to use Bennett. In the meantime, they do our monitoring, required reporting. We do need a water and wastewater engineer at the district. So at this point, we'd like to continue our relationship, but we do have the opportunity to look around. Matt Wheeler was our engineer, and he was very familiar with us. So this would be a process to replace. But I wish him well. He's going to work for the city of Lincoln as I believe, the public works director. So he's getting a 9-to-5 job. We have an oil switch that sits over by the lower shop. I think Brandy characterizes its cold as the death pit. And this is an electrical oil switch, and the problem with it is that the electrical lines come within inches of the metal top, and that's a very unsafe circumstance, and it's also extremely difficult to remove that top to actually get to work on the wires and stand things off. So we're coming up with an idea to take another riser and actually put it on top of it and raise up that level so we can remove the metal lid and get that lid way above it with a nice lid that opens up automatically. This will come back before the board as a proposal, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. one of those safety issues that we're working on, which I'll talk about a little bit more. We've had, as you all know, there's a fiber, volcano fiber project. We've had meetings with Volcano with a variety of issues. Of course, their fiber project, which hopefully you, if you have any questions on, please address those. But also, we talked about fiber redundancy for our line between here and our out valley overhead lines. And the possibility of sharing that line in certain areas. One, for redundancy, if we had another situation like Silver Lake where we had an outage, where we could actually, have a way of using their line, continuing our communications until our line is repaired, and they're using our line for different instances along the way. So that's just talks and work, but I think that's sister utilities working together to provide redundancy. So I think it's real positive. Also on July 10th, as I mentioned, Volcano, it's not actually Volcano, will be Verizon, will be coming before TriTech for a proposal to increase the height of the tower over by the Volcano building from 40 feet to 60 feet. And we asked that it be placed on the TriTech agenda and that a rendering of the future tower be provided, what's going to be located on that tower. So we'll be participating in the July 10th meeting to take a look at that. And then finally with Volcano, we've asked them to, we're going to review our DIVCA agreement. If you guys remember DIVCA, that is our franchise agreement with Volcano. And every periodically we review that agreement to make sure that they are living up to the standards of the franchise agreement and we are living up to our review. So that's in the works as well.
Michael, I have one question about
Please.
that. So right now they're both the telephone provider and the cable provider. When they put in fiber into the home, you sort of don't need both. So it'd be interesting to know what their intentions are there and then how that might affect the cable business that we share with them.
I think they're going to bundle their package up. So.
Okay.
Meaning from a physical wiring perspective or a service?
Well, I don't know whether they would. It just brings up a lot of questions in my mind. There's no reason to have a coaxial cable if you have a fiber. And if that's the source for the television and our contract with them is for cable, as opposed to a service if it's physically the cable, then I would want to know that.
Right.
So it's more a set of questions that I have then.
So they presented at East Meadows Homeowners Association yesterday, and what they basically said is they're going to terminate the fiber with a box that has 4 outputs. One is coax for the existing in-house wiring. 2 is Ethernet. 3 is telephone for your existing wiring. And 4 is Wi-Fi out of that box.
Oh, I see.
And so that's the physical termination.
And that way they can locate it and then obscure
Right.
without problem.
And then they said that we're going to revise their pricing policy over time for different data caps and over-the-top video as well as traditional, it'll be IP video, not is what they said they were going to offer. But I sort of thought it was wire now and services work in progress.
Right. Okay.
Anything else on general manager report?
Yeah, just a couple items. Did our fish stocking. I think I reported at all the meetings that we have completed our fish stockings, and you can see the fish in that shot. We have been working on transformer safety repairs. We did the one on Juniper Ridge. We also did one down on East Meadows Drive. This one was redone recently. Came out nice. There's one that was up against a tree, and actually you could put your hand underneath it and grab the wires. So we have placed rocks and done some mitigation to secure that area. So I think our crews are getting pretty good at this with time. We're losing our ability to get cinders from Caltrans. They're tightening up. So we're looking at alternatives because we do use cinders on a pretty continuous basis in the winter. And the idea that we came up with is to the first bay of the parking garage there, to put up wooden sides on that and actually put our cinders in there. We have checked, and our backhoe does fit in there. And if we can secure the back, it might be a good little area to keep cinders, because it is a service that we provide. And it's better than having to build a block wall this time of the year. So we already have 2 sides of a block wall, and with a little bit of improvements, so we'd like to see that go the rest of the way. And we could keep our inventory down to a minimum in this fashion too. Load it onto the truck, put the truck in the garage, let it warm up, and have it always available for the next storm. So that's the concept at this point. We found a home for the Casey's snowcat that he donated, so it is out of sight at this point. We certainly didn't want to put it out onto the meadow and have it be an eyesore, so it's tucked away very nicely. As you probably know, they're mopping up the Washington fire that hit the Marthville area. There's a stunning fire that closed 2 highways, as Terry can attest to. Here's some shots from the fire scene. Pretty dramatic. I don't know if you've seen that shot, but that's Monitor Pass. And you can see the turn for those bike riders that ride that a lot. We know exactly where that is. That's right past the Aspen, if you remember that on the right-hand side. So, but I think they've got that, they're mopping that up very well, and there's a sign on Ebbets. That's right near Wolf Creek.
Death Ride going ahead on schedule?
Yes.
So all roads are open.
Well, except the forest roads, Wolf Creek, Poor Boy, they're not open.
Right. But did you come over on?
Yes.
Yeah. How's it look?
It looks terrible. I mean, it jumped around a lot in certain places, so some places don't look as bad, but it did a lot of spot fires. But Monitor is really bleak.
And that concludes my manager's report.
Great. Well, I think I made an error of skipping over 2015-16 objectives. That's an open session topic right there. So there was a draft in the board package, and the Personnel Committee met on Friday and revised them a bit, mainly in terms of prioritization. I think we should probably discuss them and approve them in open session.
Absolutely.
I circulated to the board what came out of Friday. Any comments or questions or changes?
Do you want to see them, Casey? They're really interesting reading. This is last year's.
We only had 23 objectives for you.
What's that? Red is what I got accomplished. Jill, would you like? Can you show the thing? So Standish, I don't know if you want me to go through last year's results or this year's goals, or how you'd want a presentation. I'm willing to do both or either, or neither.
What would you suggest, Eric? I thought the 15-16 stuff is what we ought to do in open session.
Well, they both should be done in open session. There's nothing closed session about the results of last year's. This question is, how much detail do we want to go into?
Why don't you just go through maybe the top 3 in each of the categories?
As far as last year or this year?
Let's see. Why don't we start with last year?
Sure. So as you know, these are divided up by by area, basically the committees, except for the last one. I think as far as financial, we had a good year. We got the depreciation. We actually got it today. I think that still counts. I think we've developed a plan to improve performance matrix, and the board has established clear rate strategies that we have communicated to the public. I think we continue to need to do that. Supplemental loan was a major undertaking, and the B8 loan was completed, and we got the budget done on time. So I think financially, last year we met our goals pretty well. Capital, we were able to turn on the Out Valley line on November 1st. Yay! However, we did not bring the budget in at the $37 million as was the objective. We have done a good job on Out Valley maintenance, and we do have an excellent job on the powerhouse, being able to switch it back and forth. I'm really excited about that project and being able not to have to bring up load banks every time we need to run the generators. Harmonics is an ongoing issue. Collection repairs is a cost issue, cost-benefit issue, as Director Indy mentioned. We have made progress on our developer documents, but we have not updated our design standards, and who knows how much money we made yesterday. But we did put it on, so I mean, we didn't cancel. So, as far as planning, we have items to work on Caples Lake water rights and our capacity projections. Meadow Trail was completed and still very useful. We have developed a plan, and we are in the midst of working on grant funding. We still have work to do there. We have secured the additional HOA. We have all homeowner associations and snow removal. Personnel, we're in the process of developing our succession plan, but we have been good at communicating our health and benefit package to our employees. For communications, I think with the help of Bob Epstein, we have made progress as far as getting online people to sign up for online. Registered guests are now up to 63%, I believe, which I think is a good number. And I think the thing that I really like to key on is the tracking of abnormal usage. We have identified at least 50 leaks this year, mid-month, which is just incredible. And our staff, thanks to Jill's staff, they treat it like a Pirates game, a treasure game. They look for those, and feel like Kathy and Amy are just crazy about finding leaks and contacting people, and they're heroes when they do so. So good for them. And we kind of did not pursue the improving the communication systems because of the cost, and we sidelined that. So that's a basic recap for the 14-15. I'm pleased that it's mostly green.
Mostly green, right? Including some changes we made to your grading, Bob Epstein. We turned some of the yellows into greens. Mm-hmm. Do you want to go through any comments on 14-15?
Sure. So the Personnel Committee and I met extensively on these GMOs. I think that the first one is extremely well written as far as taking a comprehensive look at our rates, the methodology, the EDUs, the base rates, the connection fees, and trying to reduce rates in fiscal year 2016. I think we tried to also put all these in priority order per committee. So this is different from previous years. So we feel that this would be the number one goal here.
Although I hasten to add that, I don't think we could differentiate much between, say, 1, 2, and 3, but we could differentiate between 1 and 5.
Yeah. Once again, our goal is for a funding strategy for the switch station project, hopefully none at all, and the completion of the budget on time. As far as capital and operating, I think the numbers 1 and 2 are the most important on the list, resolving the complying with the TIH and reducing our O&M costs with the Out Valley line, continuing on performance reporting. I really like the circuit route tracking. I feel that has a lot of potential for emergency response and not having issues on where lines going, so I think that's a great one. I think resolving harmonics issues might be a little overstated. I think resolving it to a point that we have a plan,
I think it should be having a plan and timeline.
as we discussed.
want there.
Resolving it would be difficult.
Yeah. Right. And it's not totally within your purview to resolve. Mike?
Well, no, I disagree with that. I mean, we could resolve it one way or another within a year. But see, this goes back to the question of how urgent was it? And I'm getting a sense it's just not that urgent. It's important, but not urgent, so I'm fine with changing it now. But when we did this, I thought it was more urgent based on what Dave from Exponential had said and so on.
So the actual wording is here is have a plan and timeline.
But complete a plan and timeline for resolving the harmonics issue.
Right.
Moving on, we're going to do our Kirkwood Summer Festival and raise at least $20,000. And present a long-term plan for wastewater collection and repair, which goes along with what our previous discussion. Planning Caples Lake Water Rate continues on the list as well as their capacity projections. Recycled water has made the list as far as the use of it for irrigation and other purposes. So I think that's a good direction to keep that up. Grant funding continues on the list as far as, and the fire department needs to finance financial fire department needs. And unfortunately, Terry left the room right before we went into that. And then one that I asked for was the increasing the district's presence at our other sister agencies in the area. I think that'll pay off in dividends if we continue to, or even improve our interaction with these agencies, especially the Forest Service, EID, Vail, in the area. So Caltrans once again. Personnel completed leadership.
Michael, I'm sorry. Standish, I guess I should have caught this earlier, but it seems to me that number 5, having to do with financing fire department needs, if these are kind of in a general order of priority, should be much higher in the planning section than number 5, maybe even number 1. I think
That would
that's
be fine with me.
I think that's our weakest point right now.
Michael, you okay with that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. And were you suggesting an edit to number 6, Michael, to add Vail in as one of the affected parties if this is intended to be an exhaustive list? Or?
So my thoughts on that would be no, and the reason is I think you have regular meetings with the case, but I'm open to it if others think it makes sense.
Because
this was driven at
focus on public agencies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the objective originally came through, it was also include KCP, and predictability of getting them to a meeting is low. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
As far as continuing on personnel, by the end of the calendar year, come to a decision on Social Security participation. Also, there is a review of the CalPERS retirement contract. I think it's something that is a huge benefit for our employees and something that we should make sure that we keep an eye on and develop any improvement strategies if there are any. And then, of course, training and safety. Then information technology, which has been changed from our communication technology, is an overall IT plan, which I think Bob Epstein, you authored that one, and then measure and achieve goals by August 8th for the number of customers using the electronic notification system, electronic bill, and newsletter delivery. And then finally, the online access meter data notification of events. We continue to have that one on there and to measure the time needed to resolve any issues. So there's 26 of them, and so looks like we have our work cut out for us. I did count them up.
There's 52 weeks.
Yeah. Oh.
It's less than one a week.
Yeah, but that makes 2 for this one, so that's tough. Busy week.
Any further comments, questions? I guess I'll motion approval of these for 2015-16 as amended. Two changes we talked about.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. So I think that item 10 is committee reports. We've covered the Kirkwood Summer Festival. The other committee report that occurred since the July 4th meeting was personnel. Yesterday, or Friday, there's an agenda in the board package. Some of the topics were CalPERS audit, revised on-call policy, the employee assistance program, and changes to the district's participation in both CalPERS retirement program as well as Social Security. And we have the opportunity, if we've been discussing this for a while, since we pay into both programs now, to possibly not pay into Social Security. If we do that, we would save the district approximately $70,000 a year. And I guess I'd like to suggest further to our Personnel Committee meeting that where we schedule the next one for October, whether we could maybe accelerate this. Meaning, would it be possible, I'd like to suggest we put this on the board agenda for the August meeting and maybe the September meeting. And if we could come to resolution, in the September meeting, then maybe we could save 3/4 of this for fiscal year 2016. But the other advantage of putting it on the agenda for the August meeting is to explain it in more detail to the rest of the board and the community. Are you okay with that, Michael?
Yeah.
So there's no way to stop funding CalPERS and sticking with Social Security because CalPERS has an unfunded liability problem and Social Security doesn't?
Yeah, you'd have to buy yourself out of the liability for CalPERS. We actually looked at that at one point.
Briefly,
But it's not so with Social Security. So we can opt out of Social Security as long as we have a replacement plan, which CalPERS satisfies.
And we just, what our focus has been are there any employees, given their terms of service, years of service and contributions to Social Security, are there employees that would be badly impacted or not? So that's one question. The second question is what's the process and timeline for, the bureaucratic aspect of it. So those are the two questions we're waiting to have answered.
And then the last topic on personnel is, of course, we spent a lot of time on those general managers' objectives both last year and this year. With that, it's item 11, general discussion opportunity for board members to ask questions for clarification, provide information to staff, committee updates, request staff to report back on a matter, or to direct staff to place a matter on a subsequent agenda.
I have one I want to bring up, and that would be providing electric vehicle charging stations. And so just a couple of comments on it. One is it needs to be separately metered because it's not cost effective to charge an electric vehicle at 66 cents. But we could be very competitive at 25 cents, and it would increase our operating margins by doing so. So I think the operating costs can be very attractive now that we're off of diesel. The question is the location, because we would need to be separately metered to offer a different tariff. And the cost of putting in a meter, if a home wanted to do it and have a charging station in their home, we could have a tariff for doing that, but then you have the cost of putting in a meter. I don't know who wants to do that. But having public places where you could charge, I think, could be attractive. And then the question is finding locations where we could put in a meter, and there may be some forms of grants or other things for underwriting that. But I think it's an interesting topic to pursue, and there may be locations that Dale might identify. And they could offer services to their customers for doing that as well, and we could do it. And we could maybe have some in some spaces here. People could come and charge their vehicles. But the ultimate goal is to increase the use of electricity, decrease the use of gasoline.
Yeah, I had the same suggestion. We didn't talk. but I saw it in Hoffman's email. And so I'd like to suggest that we look into that. I hope it doesn't take a lot of time or effort, but electric vehicles are a thing of the future. We did get some emails over the last couple of years from people saying, hey, I'm on a route from here to here, can we charge at Kirkwood? And of course our answer on diesel was, we don't really know. I think Brandy, you and I had that exchange.
Right.
And while I don't have an electric vehicle, I did have a house guest who came up 2 years ago and charged on the 110 service, and it took him 3 days to get enough charge to get back to the Bay Area going downhill. Whereas last year it came up.
And he paid the premium.
No, I paid the premium.
And that was very generous of him.
Your house, is that okay?
Last year he came up and charged on the 220, and that was about 18 hours of charging. So my initial thoughts would be, I don't know, maybe a Visa card reader outside the powerhouse for a limited number of.
But we can use several different commercial services to just run it for us if we identify the locations. Whereas we don't have to develop the system. We would need to establish a tariff for a separately metered rate, which we can do fairly easily, and then identify some practical locations and have a policy. If somebody wants to put a separate metered charge into their home, there's nothing preventing us from doing that. And if it's a 50 amp 240, then it should charge in 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm not as generous on the rate as you are. I figure if somebody wants to go up here with an electric vehicle, they can pay the same rate that we pay. But you may be right.
There's always the chance I could be right. I don't want to discourage you from thinking that.
Any others?
I also talked to Howard Hoffman about that and did some preliminary research. One thing I found was interesting is there's no charging stations between Sutter Creek and here. So, so there's no charging stations between Sutter Creek and South Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
But there are charging stations, I believe, at Heavenly.
Yeah, we've actually,
Sure.
We've been approached by Tesla specifically, relative to, North Star, Heavenly, and Kirkwood's interest in this. And unfortunately, as the rate we're quoted here, the challenge is that we would be absorbing that. And we would welcome participation with the PUD in identifying locations. And arguably, I'd love to make them very high profile, very front and center opportunities to make that opportunity work. So be happy to work with you.
Your concern was the rate?
Yeah, it was the cost. And we would be absorbing it. There was some capital cost that Tesla was willing to work with us on, and certainly we'd be happy to communicate back to them. At first, our concern was just that,
Well, the problem with a Tesla is getting it up here from the Bay Area, not necessarily charging it once you get here, but you can't get here without going to Folsom. So if you're looking to enable owners of those cars to be able to get here to spend their money in the resort, I think what you ought to be asking Tesla to do is to put a supercharger station someplace like Stockton, because then the customers can arrive on your doorstep, and now they can.
But they still can't afford. They still need a way to charge here to get home.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
They're trying to establish a network of sorts,
Right.
to get, and the locations that these folks want to go to are resort related, similar to Lake Tahoe or Kirkwood, and so they're actually trying to look beyond the initial kind of area that they need to charge, whether it be Stockton or the like, and just see if there's interest in the actual resort where people want to go.
Right. Just on the tariff for a second, I mean, the more we can shift people onto electricity, the more we can amortize our costs across a broader base. So I can only think of two opportunities. One is electric vehicles, and then the other would be heat pumps to replace propane. Because we'd rather have people use electricity than propane, but that neither of those make economic sense. They only make environmental sense at our current. If you charge the same rate as everything else, since this is incremental service that we're not anticipating otherwise, our incremental costs are much less, and then we have that to spread it across a wider base. So that's my rationale for charging a Bay Area competitive price for either new heat pumps, which is still a long ways off from me figuring out whether those are economical, given the capital cost. But for electric vehicles, we can make that work now, if we want to do it.
And Casey, one more time, your concern was the capital cost Or is it the rate that?
It was the rate.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the rate, sorry.
Yeah. We probably shouldn't discuss this anymore, I mean, it's not on the agenda.
No, I'm just saying that that's what I'd like to add this to.
Well, let's put that on the agenda if we can. And related to that, I know at least in our CC&Rs for East Meadows, there's a prohibition against electric washers and dryers. And I wonder if it's worthwhile for the district through maybe the President's Council or whatever to look into revising those CC&Rs. Because again, it's all about selling kilowatt hours, which is a 90% gross margin business for us.
I think all we have to do is contact Peter Tuckson
What?
and Tony and have them put it on their agenda.
Right, I guess what I'm kind of wondering is, A, if it's broader than just our CC&Rs.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And B, if we could get it addressed valley-wide, where, I guess I'd reverse it, meaning propane is required now. I'd sort of say, hey, can we require electricity? Because propane doesn't do anything for us and it's dangerous. And the last one I had is one of the HOAs said that the snow removal credit was expected to be approved today. It's not on the agenda. Is it on the agenda for August?
It was
approved
approved
last month.
Last month. So it's already been approved. The
Okay.
August meeting will approve contracts.
Contracts, right.
For next year. Those will be those will be gross contracts. Those will be normal contracts without any credit.
Right.
This credit is for last year. So I don't anticipate, the board could change it, but I don't anticipate changes to the contracts at this point.
Great. Any other business? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, no,
It's
no,
not
it's not.
adjourned.
I'm sorry, we're going to go into closed session.
We're going to stay here.